Welcome, dear listener. Tonight, let us drift together into the hush of legend. Tell me, have you ever stared at the wide horizon of the sea and wondered what ancient secrets sleep beneath its silver skin? Breathe slowly, let the weight of the day fall away, and allow yourself to sink into stillness. For in this tale we follow the echoes of old Norse seafarers, their voices carried by wind and tide, whispering of a creature so immense, so unfathomable, that even the bravest hearts trembled at its name. Now close your eyes, rest, and let us step together into the slow rhythm of waves, where the Kraken waits. Night settles like ash over northern water, fjords answering with a sigh. Between wave and wind the sea road gleams, a pewter ribbon remembering every keel. Our listening begins on a shoreline of driftwood and slow firelight, where the cold tastes of iron and salt and tales are moored like resting longships. The north steeps its stories in brine and star smoke, wrapping them in kelp and frost until patient hands lift them from the dark. Tonight we lift one of the oldest, the Kraken, terror of sailors, shadow beneath legends, the thought that becomes a wave. Before the first oar bites the skin of the sea, there is a silence that feels ceremonial. It holds the verses of skalds and the low prayers of sailors who traced runes on the hull for luck. They named the winds and bargained with the waves, made offerings to Aegir for ale and mercy, and to Ran for nets that would not close around their lives. Beneath those words, beneath the wooden ribs that creaked like old cathedrals, another listening ran deeper, reserved for a fear without a face. Say the name Kraken, and even the lantern flame leans away from your mouth. Do not take the name as a single picture. The north drew with storms, currents, and hunger. Some called it a mountain rising to breathe, others a forest of arms braiding around hulls until wood remembered it was once a tree. Old men saw water go pale and boil without heat. Boys whispered of barnacled pillars with a secret will. Maps refused it, but margins confessed. Beware the wandering island that drowns itself when trod. Always the pulse stayed true. The sea is deeper than courage, and sometimes it speaks in flesh. This tale is not a catalogue, but a rope braided from many strands. We will follow it from a fjord that knew the feet of giants to blue roads where whale song rings like metal, then to the world's seam where ice keeps counsel with stars. The Kraken will not be hunted like a stag, but understood as the midnight sun is, by waiting until the sky forgets time. We will walk the line between fear and reverence, learning smallness. A ship waits in the cove as if listening. The dragonhead faces the wide water. The mast is a spine against low aurora. The sail bellies with a breath not yet wind. Wax seals the seams. Oars rest like sleeping hounds. The captain moves with the care of one long tutored by what cannot be mastered, and the crew murmur of weather and omens. A boy new to the oar traces a carved rune, and feels it answer like a quiet bell. Old Toasty, weathered by winters and storms, tells the boy that some shadows are not for staring at, only for acknowledging. He speaks of signs, cod fleeing before a windless day, jellyfish blackening the swash, gulls circling without a cry. Then a man oils his knife and prays to learn smallness. Smallness, he says, is a craft that moves through the day like a needle, quick and unnoticed. The North is a school of smallness. It teaches that a ship is a leaf over a depth as tall as mountains are high, that a mistake can be measured in knuckles, and that courage is an ember best kept under a cup. In such a school, the Kraken is not only a beast, it is a law. It names the seam the world stitched between knowable and not. When a helm groans and a rope sings and an oar comes up slick with wrack, the law is felt rather than heard. For now there is only wake and breath. The oars dip and lift. The boy's hands learn the length of the stroke and the mercy of the feathered blade. Sound travels oddly here. A seal's cough from half a mile away seems to bloom beside the keel, while the whisper between two oarsmen drowns in wool and frost. The captain watches the horizon for the place where it ceases to be a line and begins to be a mouth. He distrusts maps and remembers a story of a fisher who pulled up a stone that bled ink. He does not believe the stone, but he believes the ink. At the hour when frost tries to stitch the eyelids shut and sleep begs for mercy, the water ahead lightens, not with dawn but with something milkish. The crew fall silent without being told. The smell alters, less of clean iron and more of old cellar. A thin slick rises, crinkling when the bow parts it. Birds appear where there were none. First 2, then 20, then a sky crowded with wings that do not cry. They mill above one patch of sea like bees above a queen, and their shadows wheel over the sail like black runes trying to spell a warning. No one names what they think. Naming has edges. The captain nods and the oars still. The ship coasts and drifts. Around them the world listens to itself. From that listening rises a sound that could be ice breaking, or a giant turning in sleep, or a mountain remembering fire. The water domes slightly, as if the sea were taking a breath beneath a thin blanket. A ring of bubbles marches outward, patient as prayer. The birds hover lower, then higher, then lower again. The boy finds his hand on the carved rune without remembering he moved. It is here, in this held moment, that the North admits what it knows and what it only suspects. The sea fathers its terrors and mothers its mercies. Beneath the keel a will moves as slow as winter and as absolute as night. Whether it has a face or only a law's intent, it can turn a ship into a rumour. The longship rocks, the lantern flame leans as if to kiss the wood goodbye. The oarsmen ready themselves. Far below, something ancient prepares to rise or to change its mind and wait. The sea is awake. The sea holds its breath. The longship waits within that breath. Ribs murmuring, tar sweet as if the hull were a hive. The captain keeps one palm on the tiller and one on silence. Orders fall away like snow that changes its mind before landing. The boy leans toward the water without moving, as if listening could have a body. Old Toasty's shoulder is a winter hill beside him. Beneath, the rounded swell draws down, then rises again, a sleeper refusing to wake yet unable to fall deep. Gulls ring the low stars and turn without a cry. The slick quivers and opens in a patient bloom, not revealing, only hinting. No arm breaks water, no mountain shudders to light. Instead 100 small signs lift like hairs on a neck. Capless sheer past in a silver whisper. The air smells of bruised kelp and a cellar's warmth, a sweetness out of season. The boy tastes it and thinks of barrels, of patient time, of something that keeps its own calendar beneath all calendars. Old Toasty exhales through his teeth. What wakes, he says, wakes slow. Even his whisper wears a hood. The boy holds the carved rune as a sailor holds a truth that might cut his hand. Every creature has a centre. He imagines that knot of will below them, ancient as the first salt. Some say Agok brewed the Kraken like a dark ale in his farthest hall. Some say Ran polished it with drowned oaths until law gleamed upon its skin. Another telling says it is hunger made patient by depth and age. The captain edges the dragonhead, fingers width away from the paling patch. To be caught broadside is to be written by the sea in a sentence that ends too soon. Oars hover. The mast line hushes and learns manners. The keel goes forward as if asking permission of each inch. The water thickens as history does, and the ship feels it, a reluctance to part that is not refusal but gravity of thought. They pass over shapes that are not shapes, rooms in an unseen house built of pressure. There are tales of men who landed on the Kraken's back, mistaking its patience for stone, laying cook fires on flesh that dreamed through the sparks. There are quieter tales in which the Great One rises only enough to warn, troubled by iron waste and nets that take more than need. Old Toasty shows a scar that spirals like a knot in oak, and speaks of a rope that once sang wrong, how listening saved him. The boy studies the deck's faint music and feels his hands learning to read. Bubbles travel outward in measured ranks, prayers that forgot their words yet kept their path. For a heartbeat a barnacle the size of a millstone shows, then erases itself, shy as a saint. A fine snow lifts from the dark, disturbed silt, remembering the touch. The boy thinks of a household too large for walls, of tidiness measured in miles. He thinks of cups within cups, pale moons nested in onyx, and feels watched by a mind that does not require eyes to sort courtesy from trespass. The first touch is kindness, a pressure, not a grip. Lifts the longship the breadth of a hand. A breath follows, warm as stored apples, scattering the silent birds. In that breath lives whale musk, grounds of silt, and something like fermented thunder. The captain bows by reflex. Old Toasty's lips move with the prayer stones use when they wait a river into learning. Not menace alone travels the planks. Announcement does, a grave attendance with its own slow grammar of mercy. Then undeciding returns. The dome eases flat. The marching bubbles break and wheel, stitching a far circumference the boat can barely dream across. Winter is a master of such pauses, and the North loves to teach by almosts. The ship hangs like a comma in the ocean's long sentence. The boy understands, with no words to carry it, that the creature below is not merely appetite in the dark, but the sea's thought about measure, its memory of vows, and the way debt ripples into weather. Water clears. The slick withdraws and again shows only their reflections, thin and wavering, as if they were the deep ones and the depth the sky. The captain waits 12 slow breaths and nods. The first pull of the oars is a question. The sea answers by loosening its hold. They pass the place where the barnacle appeared, and the boy feels a hook of ore settle under his ribs. He will not boast. He will instead recite the new grammar with his wrists, and read storms at their edges. Stars reclaim their priesthood. Aurora fades to unreadable green. Behind them the water smooths its hair. Yet a very large thought has turned in its sleep and found another cool side of the pillow. The captain steers for the skerries by a route that respects edges. Origins, Old Toasty says at last, are a kind of weather. The Kraken may have begun when the first net took more than hunger asked, or when a promise to the sea went thirsty. The boy listens as the horizon pales toward open water. Ice rings softly against the hull, and a seal writes a brief comma on the water before vanishing. Far off, a whale breath rises like a column and unthreads in the wind. The men take it as a distant benediction. They will eat later and say little, but first the reefs must be counted, the tides consulted like stern elders. The sea, which forgot them to think heavier thoughts, remembers them again as lamp, nail, wool, breath, and makes room. Beyond the skerries, the blue plain waits with its older laws. The captain sets the tiller. Council continues. Now, by wave and stone, where counsel speaks in tones of patience, the longship glides along reefs that rise like the vertebrae of some elder beast, their spines tipped with frost. Men bend to their oars, pulling with reverence, as though every stroke must be offered rather than forced. Their eyes stray often to the boy, who now rose with shoulders steadier, his breath falling into rhythm with the tide. The rune he carved with restless fingers earlier seems warmer against his palm, carrying some residue of the presence that stirred beneath them. Old Toasty watches and nods, knowing that each encounter with the Kraken leaves a trace, like the smoke from a sacred fire staining rafters long after the flames have gone. The air thins as they leave the fjord's mouth, salt sharpening into the taste of boundless water. The North Sea unfurls ahead, immense and indifferent, its swell rolling with the heavy certainty of history. Here stories are both born and consumed, for the sea is a hearth that swallows even as it gives. Men tell of the Kraken not to decorate nights with dread, but because the creature is folded into the fabric of this openness. It is the reminder stitched along the hem of every journey that no map ever holds the full measure of the deep. To speak of it is to admit that the world has rooms where the door is never open to mortals. Clouds bank low, dragging the weight of their skirts across the horizon. The ship presses into waters that seem older, darker, yet the men breathe easier for the distance from the slick. Still, a hush rides with them, the sense that the sea is not forgotten. The boy asks quietly how such a being first came to be. Old Toasty answers with care, as if the telling itself might summon an ear from below. He speaks of days before men knew the skill of carving prows or spinning sailcloth, when the gods themselves wrestled with the ordering of waters. Hager brewed ale as wide as storms, and Ran cast her nets not merely for men but for the dreams of creation itself. From the froth of that ferment, some say, the Kraken was born, an answer the sea gave to its own hunger. Others say it is no child of gods, but a remnant, left over from when Ymir's body was cleaved to shape the world. When the great giant's blood poured forth and became the oceans, not every piece of him found its place. One fragment, immense and willful, sank into the furthest depths, becoming not corpse but being, slow beating with memory of the first chaos. Thus the Kraken, older than ships, older than nets, older even than the first name whispered for fear. The boy listens, his eyes wide, and wonders if truth may be both tales woven together, like the warp and weft of a sail catching one wind. The men row on, but their minds walk through Toasty's words. For in the north, myth is not decoration, it is compass. If the Kraken is chaos remnant, then to face it is to measure how far order stretches before it frays. If it is the sea's own answer to hunger, then every catch, every barrel salted with cod is an echo of its appetite. And if both are true, then men live on the edge of a question the world itself keeps asking, a question that cannot be refused. Ahead, the sea darkens to green-black glass. The captain orders sail raised. The canvas unfurls like a pale wing, catching the lean of the wind. The longship quickens, prow cleaving foam. Yet with speed comes the old fear, for swifter passage also courts swifter encounter. The men speak little. Their eyes mark distant shadows, whale spouts, drifting ice, and shapes less easily named. Always in the back of thought. Is the sea stirring, or only remembering? The difference is slender, as the distance between dream and waking. That night, the crew beach their vessel on a strand of shingle, firelight blooming against the cold. Sparks ascend like messengers carrying unspoken prayers to indifferent stars. The boy eats fish roasted on a stick and hears the older men murmur tales in half voice. One speaks of a merchant ship found adrift, its crew gone, mast splintered, deck soaked in brine as though some vast wave had risen from beneath, not above. Another recalls a net so heavy it dragged 2 men overboard, yet when pulled ashore it held nothing but torn kelp and bones of fishes crushed as though by stone. The boy shivers though the fire is warm. Later, lying with his cloak tight, he dreams the sea speaks in syllables too large for human tongue. He dreams of arms unfurling like forests, of an eye dim as a sunken moon gazing without malice, only with the weight of endless waiting. He wakes before dawn, heart slow, breath steady, unsure if the dream was warning or gift. The tide has risen, smoothing the strand, and gulls stand silent on the wet stones. The captain watches the horizon, already awake, as though listening to the same hidden counsel. They push off again, sail drawing, oars dipping, the sea carrying them into its cathedral vastness. The boy senses that they are not merely travellers, but participants in a conversation older than speech, each stroke of the oar a syllable, each gust in the sail an answer. Somewhere beneath, the Kraken listens. It need not show itself, for its presence is carried in signs, in the hush before gulls rise, in the sudden thinning of fish, in the way water thickens to syrup around a keel. Origins are not fixed, they flow as the sea flows, but always they return to the same truth. The Kraken is not invention, but recognition, the sea's own memory given muscle and pulse. Toward evening, clouds part to reveal a narrow band of gold, the horizon breathing firelight into water. The ship passes over sudden calm, the swell subsiding as though a hand has smoothed it flat. Oars creak, men pause, and once more silence leans heavy. The boy grips his rune. Old Toasty whispers that beginnings are not past but constant, and sometimes the sea reminds men by showing what it still keeps. The captain steadies the tiller, gaze set forward, knowing that when the sea clears its throat, men must be ready to answer. Somewhere ahead, the water thickens again. The water thickens again, though no wind has shifted. Oars drag with reluctance, as if each blade must part a curtain of unseen fabric. The men glance toward the captain, but he offers no command beyond the calm of his steady hand upon the tiller. He knows, as they do, that the sea is announcing itself in a deeper tongue. The boy feels the rune grow warmer in his palm, as if the wood itself recognizes the pattern of the depth's slow breathing. Silence gathers, broken only by the creak of timber and the small complaint of ropes stretched taut against invisible weight. A band of light falls from the retreating clouds, a narrow spear across the sea, and in its gleam something stirs. Not a breach, not an arm, not the vast body the stories name, but a tremor that travels outward, spreading ripples with uncanny order. They march like soldiers even, measured as though drilled by an ancient law. The longship rides their rise and fall, each ripple a question pressed against the hull. Old Toasty murmurs that this is how the sea reminds mortals of the scale they cannot grasp, showing a fragment of a gesture while the rest remains hidden, too immense for eyes. The boy peers over the side and sees the water turned cloudy, as if a great ink had been stirred below. For a heartbeat he imagines it is the creature's breath, each plume a sigh escaping from caverns deeper than mountains. Then he sees smaller shapes within the cloud, fish darting, fleeing, their silver bodies flashing in panicked chorus. They scatter to the margins, leaving a void beneath the keel. The absence of life is more terrible than its presence, a hollow in the world that feels like thought withdrawing. He shivers, knowing instinctively that the Kraken's awareness brushes against them, testing not with malice but with the weight of curiosity. The captain lifts his head, eyes narrowing toward the horizon. He knows these signs, has carried them in his bones since boyhood. Fish driven from their swarms, birds circling without call, water made heavy by unseen will. He remembers tales of men who mistook this stillness for mercy, lowering nets into the pale slick, only to draw them up swollen with more than they could ever salt, the weight dragging them under in sudden ruin. Abundance can be as deadly as scarcity, for both are gifts of the same hand. He keeps the men from casting lines, though hunger gnaws at their bellies, reminding them that survival demands patience as much as courage. A hush falls deeper still, and in it comes a sound low as earth shifting in sleep. It travels through wood, through bone, through marrow, so that the men feel it more than hear it. The boy's teeth ache with its depth as though the sea itself were chanting. Old Tosti closes his eyes, lips moving with words no one else can catch, half prayer, half remembering. He has heard this voice once before, long ago when he was younger than the boy now, and it left a mark on his spirit like frost-etching glass. He knows it is not rage but recognition, the sea acknowledging itself through them, reminding them that they are threads woven into its tapestry, not outside it. The clouds break wider, revealing a sky smeared with dying light. For an instant, the sea mirrors fire, and within that reflection the boy swears he sees shapes vast and shifting, an arch that might be the curve of a limb, a shadow that might be an eye the size of his entire body. He blinks, and the sea is once more only water, only ripples, only fleeing fish. Yet the impression remains, imprinted on his spirit like the after-image of staring into the sun. He clutches the rune harder, not for protection, but because he feels he has been noticed, and being noticed by something older than gods is both blessing and burden. The ship glides free, as suddenly as it was caught, the water loosening its grip, oars once more light, sail filling with obedient breath. The men exhale as if waking from a dream too deep. Some cross themselves, some whisper charms, others only row in silence, unwilling to break the fragile reprieve. The captain keeps his eyes ahead, though he knows that what lies behind cannot be left. The sea carries all moments within itself, folding them like layers of tide. Old Tosti sighs and tells the boy that the Kraken never reveals all, but what it does show is less than enough. That power without measure still chooses when to be seen, and mortals are wise to heed such restraint. Night closes around them, stars spilling in scattered frost. The aurora stirs faintly, a green veil drawn across the firmament. The crew settles into their rhythm, yet none truly sleep when their turn comes. Each man lies awake, listening, waiting for another shift beneath, half fearing, half yearning to feel that weight again. The boy dreams with open eyes, the sea's voice echoing inside him, not words but currents of feeling, vast and slow, like the turning of ages. He senses that they are being carried, not merely across distance, but toward an unveiling, where the creature's true nature will ripple into sharper relief. By dawn the horizon widens, and with it the sense of approach. Whales travel nearby, their spouts rising like brief columns of incense. The men smile at the sight, for whales mean life, a reminder that not all depths are ruled by terror. Yet old Tosti warns softly that even whales move aside when the Kraken stirs, as lesser fires dim before a greater flame. The boy holds this thought close, watching as the sea stretches endless and calm, knowing calm is the skin of deeper tempests. The captain grips the tiller, steady as stone, while above, the gulls turn in widening circles. Ahead, the sea waits, its silence not empty, but heavy with promise. The silence that hung over the sea at dawn is not a silence of peace, but of expectation, like a hall awaiting the tread of some heavy guest. The gulls wheel wider, circling in hesitant arcs, their pale wings sharp against the sky's pale wash. The long ship cuts its course through still water, each stroke of the oar a measured vow, each creak of timber a confession. The boy sits taller at his bench, though his arms ache, for within him lingers that impression of vast awareness, a gaze that pressed upon him without malice, yet with such weight he cannot forget it. He rose as though watched still, each pull offered as tribute. Old Tosti chews his beard, eyes narrowed at the horizon. He speaks softly, telling the boy that not all tales of the Kraken are warnings. Some are reminders of balance. For just as Ran's net can take life in its sweep, it can also spare, leaving the chosen untouched. So too does the great one below weigh its moments, sometimes lifting a ship gently as a cradle, sometimes dragging it down to silence. Mortals may never guess the pattern, but the pattern exists, as constant as the tides. The boy listens, his thoughts bending toward a truth larger than fear. That terror and mercy might share a single heartbeat, if the heart is vast enough. The captain keeps his gaze forward, yet the memory of drowned ships tugs at him. He has seen them before, keels upturned, planks gnawed, not by storm but by pressure that came from below. Once he passed a mast that still bore its sail, yet the ship was gone, swallowed whole, as though sea had grown tired of its company. These images are written in his blood, etched deeper than scars, guiding his every decision. He knows too well that the Kraken's presence does not announce itself for spectacle, but for necessity. When the sea demands tribute, it chooses the weight itself. The morning light spreads, gilding the wave tops. Fish leap in sudden bursts, flashing silver against the gold, fleeing from shadows unseen. The men watch with unease, for abundance, as Toasty warned, is never free. The boy wonders aloud if perhaps the Kraken feeds on such gatherings, calling them to itself with some ancient will. Toasty nods, his voice gravel and certainty. He tells of a time when a catch filled barrels before the net was even pulled, fish flinging themselves into the boat until men begged the sea to stop. They thought themselves blessed, but the blessing grew heavy, dragging timbers low until only sacrifice and offering cast overboard brought release. In the old man's eyes gleams not fear but recognition, as though he has walked beside this truth too many years to despise it. Toward midday the air shifts, heavy with warmth that does not belong to northern seas. The boy wipes his brow and feels a strange stillness, as though even wind has bowed away. Beneath the water pales, milkish, streaked with tendrils of darker green that coil like smoke. The captain signals the oars to still, and the ship drifts. In that quiet the sea begins to heave, not in waves but in slow deliberate lifts, as though something vast breathes beneath them. The longship rises and falls, cradle to breath, each swell a chest expanding unseen. Then, without sound, the water breaks into a bloom of foam. A tentacle, thick as the mast, slides upward, not striking, only lifting into sight. Its surface gleams with barnacles like scattered moons, its flesh a shifting hue of shadowed grey. It does not reach for them, but unfurls toward the sky, dripping salt and silence. The boy clutches the rune until his knuckles pale, but within his chest beats not only fear, awe fills him, vast and steady, for he feels the gesture is not assault but declaration, a reminder of scale, of being. The tentacle sways once, slow as the turn of a tree in storm, then sinks again, leaving only ripples wide as fields. The men exhale in ragged unison, each carrying the mark of what they have seen. None speak. To break the silence would be to lessen it, to make small what is beyond measure. Even the captain lowers his gaze, humbled though his hand never wavered from the tiller. Old Toasty breathes deep, whispering that they were shown only enough to remember, not enough to understand. He knows the Kraken reveals itself not to terrify, but to remind mortals of their place within a creation that dwarfs them. The boy nods, trembling, knowing he will dream of that barnacled pillar for years, whether in waking or in sleep. As the ship drifts onward, the sea resumes its ordinary rhythm, but none aboard can mistake it for ordinary any longer. The gulls cry again, cautious, their voices breaking the spell. The men resume their rowing, though their strokes are gentler now, each movement mindful of the depths beneath. They feel as though they travel not only across the sea but across a threshold, carrying knowledge fragile as flame cupped in hands. The boy, staring at the horizon, senses more to come. The Kraken's presence lingers in the water, in the air, in the pulse of their own hearts, as though it has chosen to follow them unseen. And ahead, the sky darkens, clouds rolling heavy with storm, a new test gathering on the breath of the deep. The storm gathers with the solemnity of a sermon, its clouds layered like the dark wings of a waiting choir. Wind, absent all morning, begins to whisper low along the sail, tugging threads into uneasy song. The longship creaks, its ribs answering with old patience, as though the wood remembers centuries of storms that came before. The captain studies the shifting sky, not fearful but attentive, for he knows storms are less enemy than ritual, the sea testing both vessel and man. Yet tonight the storm is not alone. Beneath the first roll of thunder, he feels another rhythm, slower, deeper, a pulse rising from the water itself. The Kraken stirs, not in sight but in sympathy, as if the weather and the creature are two verses of the same hymn. The boy grips his oar, heart quick, yet his breath steadies as old Toasty leans close, speaking words meant for storms and youths alike. Fear, the old man says, is not the same as panic. Fear keeps the hands steady when lightning unthreads the sky. Panic throws them away. To row in such company is to remember that the sea respects composure. The boy nods, clutching the carved rune at his breast, its edges pressing into his skin like the spine of a truth too large to hold fully. Rain begins in scattered drops, each striking the sea like a priest's bell calling silence. Then the sky loosens, and water falls in sheets, binding air and ocean into one grey body. The men row blind, guided only by rhythm, trusting the captain's steady hand. Thunder answers from far above, but deeper still. Through the storm's roar comes another resonance, the voice of the Kraken moving beneath. The boy cannot tell if the storm was drawn to the creature or the creature to the storm, but in that mingling he senses intention, as though nature itself is confessing that its powers are kin, not rivals. The sea lifts suddenly, not with ordinary swell but with a great inhalation, the keel rising high before sliding into a trough black as a wound. Spray lashes faces, salt-stinging eyes, but no man loosens grip. They know storms of air. This surge feels older, born not of wind but of motion vast and hidden. Old Tosti closes his eyes, lips moving in a prayer that is more listening than plea. He feels the Kraken beneath them, stirring with measured care, its limbs shifting currents, its bulk altering tides. To the men above, it is chaos. To the creature below, it is breath. For hours they endure. Lightning carves brief windows into night, flashing against waves that rear like towers. Each glimpse shows the sea not merely as water but as cathedral, columns rising and falling, roofed with thunder. The boy rows as if the rune guides his arms, each stroke merging with the storm's cadence. Within his chest beats the memory of the tentacles' slow unfurling, and though terror gnaws, awe steadies him. He feels not hunted but witnessed, as though the Kraken's gaze has followed them into the storm, ensuring they learn what endurance means when measured against eternity. At last the fury thins, rain slackens, thunder drifts farther off, lightning fading into whispered echoes. The sea calms, not to stillness, but to weary rhythm, swells rolling like the chest of a giant falling back into slumber. The men sag at their benches, arms trembling, faces hollow with exhaustion yet alive with reverence. They have passed through trial, not untouched but unbroken. In their silence lies a deeper understanding. The storm was not accident nor cruelty. It was communion, a weaving of sky, sea and shadow beneath, all bound by the same law. The captain raises his eyes to the pale dawn struggling through the clouds. His beard drips, his cloak hangs heavy, but his voice is firm as he orders sail raised. The canvas fills slowly, catching hesitant breath. Around them the sea shines with that strange brilliance that follows storms, every surface glittering, every ripple edged with fragile light. The boy inhales deeply, salt and rain mingling in his lungs, and feels something shift inside him. Where once there was only dread, there is now a kind of reverence, as if he has glimpsed the sea's true scripture, written not in ink but in motion and sound. They sail on, quiet but not afraid. Even the gulls return, their cries tentative, like acolytes testing song after a silence too long. Old Toasty leans on his oar, murmuring that storms are the Kraken's language, its way of reminding mortals that power exists not merely to destroy but to teach scale. The boy listens, and though he does not fully grasp the old man's meaning, he feels its weight settle in him. He knows now that the Kraken is not simply a beast to fear, but a presence to endure, a law to respect, a mystery to carry. Toward evening, the horizon clears into an expanse of pale gold, the sun spilling across waves tamed by fatigue. The men eat in silence, sharing dried fish and rainwater caught in buckets, their eyes lingering on the soft glow spreading over the world. The boy chews slowly, gaze fixed on the water. He wonders if beneath the calm the Kraken rests too, content with the storm it has summoned or shaped. He imagines its vast limbs curled like roots around a mountain of stone, its great body rocking gently in rhythm with the tide, and feels an odd kinship, as though his own weariness mirrors that hidden stillness. Night approaches again, but this night carries no threat. The aurora returns, pale green bands sliding slow across the heavens, their light a balm after thunder's violence. The men lie back on their cloaks, eyes heavy, listening to the sea breathe beneath them, yet within that peace hums a quiet tension, for they know storms are never final, only paused. The Kraken abides, older than weather, patient as stone, and its will remains. The boy drifts towards sleep with that thought, his rune against his chest, while far below, something vast stirs faintly, waiting for the next chapter in its slow unfolding. Far below the aurora's dim glow, where light cannot reach, the Kraken curls within its cathedral of pressure. It listens to the thinning storm above, the waves still unsettled, carrying the memory of thunder. Its limbs rest against stone ridges worn smooth by centuries of tides. Barnacles encrust its skin like pale constellations, and slow currents braid through the forest of its tentacles. It does not sleep, for the sea itself does not sleep. It only abides, carrying in its vast body the memory of every ship that crossed, every offering thrown, every cry swallowed. The storm was not its fury, but it felt the storm's rhythm as kin. In silence it measures its hunger, not with impatience, but with the patience of an age that has watched ice form and retreat more times than men have counted. Above, the longship glides across calmer water, but no man aboard mistakes this calm for safety. The storm left them weary, stripped of words, each man carrying in his chest a stillness heavy as stone. The boy drifts between sleep and waking, lulled by the sea's hushed breath, his fingers tracing the rune he carries. He dreams of shapes moving beneath the keel, not threatening, only circling, their vast outlines brushing the edge of thought. He dreams of an eye, dim as a sunless moon, gazing upward without accusation, as though weighing his worth. He wakes before dawn, and though the dream fades, the impression lingers like salt upon his skin. Old Tosti is already awake, staring toward the eastern light. His face, furrowed like carved wood, carries both weariness and reverence. He tells the boy that storms leave marks not only on ships, but on men, shaping them into different beings than they were before. The boy nods, though his heart beats faster, for he knows the old man speaks not only of storms. The Kraken itself has left a mark, unseen yet undeniable, as though part of its patience has entered his blood. He feels older than his years, though the sea reminds him in every glance how small he truly remains. By midday the ship reaches deeper waters, where the bottom falls away into a chasm men cannot fathom. Here the sea grows darker, the swell slower, as though weighed down by hidden mass. The captain keeps the tiller steady, but his eyes scan the horizon with the vigilance of one who knows that the sea's surface is only mask. He remembers tales whispered in winter halls of sailors who cast anchor in these waters and never found the stone's bottom. The rope ran until it vanished, swallowed whole, and when they hauled it back, it came wet with slime that glowed faintly in darkness. Such stories are not warnings alone. They are maps of reverence, guiding men where to tread with silence. The boy leans over the side, staring into depths too dark to yield shape. His mind teems with questions he dares not voice. What does it feel like to dwell forever in such weight? What dreams can be born where light is never present? Imagines the Kraken's vast body folded in chambers of pressure, its limbs weaving through forests of kelp that never see sun, its skin brushing stones carved by nothing but silence. He imagines it not lonely but sovereign, a being to whom loneliness is foreign, for the sea itself is its companion, and eternity its home. As evening falls, the men light no fire, for the wind is still, and stars are plentiful. The aurora shimmers faintly, a green veil stretching across heaven's shoulders. Beneath its glow, the sea takes on a glass-like calm, deceptive in its stillness. The boy listens to the hush, waiting, for he feels certain the Kraken lingers near, curious still. Old Tosti hums under his breath, a tune older than words, said to soothe waters when storms were near. Some men close their eyes, others watch the sky, but all remain silent when the water begins to change. At first it is only a shifting colour, a pale spreading patch that glimmers faintly as though lit from below. Then bubbles rise, slow, deliberate, forming circles that widen outward. The longship rocks gently in their wake. The boy grips the gunwale, heart racing, yet he does not cry out. He knows now that the Kraken reveals itself in fragments, signs stitched into the water like runes men cannot fully read. He feels the weight of that presence pressing upward, not yet breaking surface, only brushing against the veil that separates worlds. The captain orders silence, and silence is kept. The ship drifts into the pale patch, its reflection fractured, as though mirror and face were both trembling. For a moment the boy thinks he sees the faint curve of an arm far below, then it is gone, swallowed back into shadow. The water sighs, bubbles breaking softly like prayers forgotten before they are spoken. Old Tosti bows his head, whispering that such moments are not threats, but invitations, reminders that the sea's heart is not empty but inhabited. The boy understands, though his breath shakes, that they are not merely passing through the Kraken's domain, they are passing through its thought. When at last the water stills, the crew exhales as one, each man carrying in silence what he saw or thought he saw. None speak of it openly, for to give shape in words might break the fragile mystery. Instead they row on, the sail catching a gentle wind, the stars guiding them into another stretch of night. Yet the impression lingers, carved deeper with each sign. The Kraken is not only terror, but presence, a shadow vast enough to hold fear and awe together. The boy drifts toward restless sleep, and in his half-dream he hears it again, that deep voice moving through bone and timber, not words but recognition. He wonders, as dawn begins to bleed across the horizon, if one day the creature will rise in full, no longer content with fragments. Dawn spills over the horizon like honey from a broken comb, thick and golden, stretching across waters that gleam too still for comfort. The long ship drifts with wind light upon its sail, the men silent as monks, each caught within the echo of last night's visitation. The boy stares into the pale sea, half hoping, half fearing that the vast curve he glimpsed might return. The rune pressed against his chest has warmed to his skin, as though it remembers as well. He feels both marked and chosen, though he cannot yet say whether for mercy or for trial. The captain keeps his hand upon the tiller, eyes steady. His years have taught him that the Kraken does not linger without reason. Every glimpse, every ripple of omen is a stitch in some larger tapestry. He senses they are being drawn, not aimlessly but along a path the sea itself has woven. He does not resist, for resistance against the ocean is folly. Instead, he guides the ship as one might guide a prayer, knowing the destination lies hidden, even as the current bears them on. By midday the sky clears to a piercing blue, but the sea below turns strangely opaque, milk-white in streaks, as though some vast sterling unsettled its depths. Fish vanish from the wake, and birds, once abundant, circle far from the vessel. Uneasy, old Toasty leans over the side, spitting into the froth, watching how the bubbles spread in rings too wide for the throw of his saliva. He shakes his head, muttering that the Kraken feeds, not with frenzy, not like shark or whale, but with patience, drawing to itself what it wills. The boy shudders, picturing schools of fish collapsing inward like sparks to a hidden flame, vanishing into silence too complete for men to comprehend. Stories return to him, told in the glow of hearths. Ships that once found bounty beyond belief, nets sagging with cod so plentiful the sea seemed eager to gift itself. Yet always the gift proved curse, the weight too heavy for wood, the deck flooded until crew and cargo alike were swallowed whole. Old Tosti calls such tales not exaggeration but warning. The Kraken does not always take by claw or limb. Sometimes it drowns with generosity, burdening mortals with more than their arms can bear. The boy feels a chill at the thought that abundance may be as perilous as hunger. That night they anchor near a small isle, little more than a crown of rock, draped in moss and gulls. The men light a cautious fire, shielding it against the wind with stones. Their voices stay low, as though the water itself leans to listen. The boy sits close to Tosti, who hums old chants between bites of dried fish. He tells how some sailors, desperate for safe passage, left gifts upon the water, barrels of ale, carved idols, even blades of fine steel. Sometimes the sea returned them ashore, carried back like spurned offerings. Other times the gifts vanished without trace, and the ship sailed home without storm. No one could ever say whether the Kraken claimed them, or whether the sea itself chose what to keep. When sleep comes, it comes uneasily. The boy dreams again of the great eye, but this time it opens fully, vast and round, its gaze not cruel but fathomless. He feels himself drawn into its depths, pulled into a spiral of memory not his own. He glimpses glaciers forming, mountains crumbling, forests sinking beneath waves, all as though watched by that patient presence. He wakes with salt upon his lips, and finds dawn already grey, the tide tugging hard at their anchor, as though urging them seaward once more. The journey resumes, the isles shrinking behind, the horizon widening like a mouth. The water deepens in colour, turning from silver to a shadowed green that seems almost alive. The men row with care, their strokes matched not to speed but to balance, as if every pull of the oar were part of a ritual to appease the depths. The captain scans the skies, but it is not storm he fears. He knows the signs are gathering again. The thinning of birds, the sudden barrenness of sea, the pale streaks curling like smoke through the dark water. By midday the first bubbles appear, small at first, and larger, drifting up in a rhythm too deliberate to be random. They form a wide ring around the long ship, the surface quivering as though the sea inhales. The men freeze, oars lifted, the ship drifts in the circle, caught within the stillness of breath held too long. The boy's heart thunders, yet within him stirs not only terror, but an odd reverence. He feels as though they are guests invited into some unseen hall, their silence demanded by walls vast enough to crush them without notice. The water bulges, faint at first, then rising, a dome pressing upward. Foam spreads, the surface breaking into fractured lace. The boy grips the gunwale, eyes wide, while old Tosti whispers that they must not shout, must not call aloud, for to cry into such presence is to risk being heard too clearly. The dome swells, trembles, then subsides, leaving only widening ripples. No limb breaks surface, no more, no eye. Yet every man feels the truth. They have brushed against the creature's body, felt its sheer mass shifting beneath, vast as mountains, yet moving with the subtlety of a sigh. The captain bows his head, not as man bows to king, but as sailor bows to sea, acknowledging the law that commands both storm and calm. The men dip their oars again, rowing with quiet rhythm, carrying the weight of what they have witnessed. The boy trembles still, but his heart is not broken by fear. Rather it is expanded, stretched to hold wonder too great for words. He understands that each encounter leaves them changed, not merely passengers upon the sea, but participants in its endless conversation. The long ship glides on, the ring of bubbles fading behind, yet none aboard mistake this retreat for conclusion. They know the Kraken abides, waiting with patience that makes centuries brief. Ahead the horizon darkens once more, not with storm but with depth itself, as though the sea prepares to show them another face of its memory. The horizon darkens not with storm but with a density of shadow, as though the sea itself thickens towards some secret centre. The longship glides into that hush, each creak of timber sounding louder than it should, each breath of the men strangely magnified. The boy leans over the gunwale, eyes fixed on the water that grows steadily darker, its surface gleaming like obsidian polished by centuries. His rune feels heavy now, no longer a comfort in his hand, but a weight reminding him that he is small, fragile, fleeting. He does not loosen his grip. He clings because the weight is truth, and truth is harder to bear than fear. Old Tosti senses the shift before the others, his bones answering to the subtle drag beneath the keel. He whispers that they are nearing the place men call the Hollow, a chasm within the sea deeper than mountains are high. Few ships pass here willingly, for it is said the Kraken favours such abysses, resting in their silence as a sleeper curls into the marrow of night. The boy shivers, but he does not doubt. The stillness around them feels less like calm and more like a mouth preparing to close. The captain keeps his gaze fixed ahead, though his jaw tightens. He knows these waters by tale, not by oar. Mariners speak of them in firelight with voices low, warning that even whales flee their brink, their songs fading like bells drowned beneath stone. It is said that once a ship dropped anchor here, its rope unspooling endlessly, until it snapped with a sound like bone breaking. When the men hauled it back, the hemp was slick with black slime that burned the hands. No one questioned where it had fallen, for the sea does not explain itself, it only answers with what it keeps. As they drift into the hollow's reach, the water shifts colour, no longer green or grey, but ink dark, almost luminous in its depth. Bubbles rise, slow and sparse, as if the sea exhales reluctantly. The boy swears he sees faint glimmers beneath, like lanterns carried in procession far below. He wonders if they are fish, if such fragile things could live so deep. Old Toasty shakes his head. He mutters that those lights are not life, but memory, sparks left behind by things too old to die. The boy swallows hard, unsure whether to believe, yet unable to forget. The hush falls heavier, pressing even upon breath. The men pull their oars softer, each stroke careful, reverent, unwilling to disturb what lies beneath. Then the keel lurches ever so slightly, not upward, not downward, but sideways, as if nudged by something vast and unseen. The ship tilts, water lapping close to the rim, and a murmur of fear stirs among the crew. The captain raises a hand, commanding stillness. He knows the difference between current and will. This was not tide. This was a tension. The boy grips the room tighter, heart pounding. He feels it then, not through eyes but through marrow. The Kraken is near, its presence spreading like a tide that reaches into thought. He senses no anger, only awareness, as though the creature is considering them, measuring their weight, not in metal or flesh, but in essence. He cannot explain it, yet he feels weighed like a pebble in a giant's palm. The thought both humbles and terrifies, for to be noticed at all by such immensity is to be changed. Old Toasty whispers of omens. He recalls how fishermen once saw the sea boil with fish, leaping into nets with reckless abandon, only for the catch to drag them under. He tells how another ship sailed over calms so perfect it seemed carved in glass, until the sea rose beneath them, lifting their vessel high upon a living mountain before letting it slide back with mercy. None ever knew why one crew was spared and another taken. He says the Kraken does not hunt as men hunt. It decides as sea decides, without reason that mortals can read. The boy feels a stirring beneath, a vibration so deep it blurs the line between sound and thought. His bones hum with it, his teeth ache, his heart slows as though keeping time with a rhythm older than creation. He imagines the Kraken's vast body curled within the hollow, limbs trailing like forests of living rope, eyes dim yet awake, gazing upward with patience. He imagines it not merely as beast, but as presence, as law, the embodiment of the sea's most ancient decree that nothing is truly safe upon its surface, and nothing truly lost beneath. Then the water bulges, rising slightly, not enough to break, but enough for the ship to tilt. Foam circles outward, widening into rings. The men freeze, breath caught, every muscle tight. The captain keeps his hand upon the tiller, steady, reverent. He knows they are balanced upon the edge of decision. The boy trembles, yet he does not cry out. He feels, against all reason, that the Kraken will not destroy them here. Not now. It only reminds them of where they are, not owners of the sea, but guests, fragile and fleeting, at the mercy of something immeasurably older. The swell subsides, the bubbles fade, and the longship steadies. Slowly the men begin to row again, their strokes cautious but sure. They do not speak, their silence is offering enough. The boy gazes back at the hollow, the dark water swallowing itself into endless night, and he knows he will carry that image until his last breath. Ahead the horizon gleams faintly, touched with the silver of moonrise. They move toward it, Yet each man feels the hollow still clinging, as though they have not truly left. For the Kraken does not release so easily. It lingers within them, carried like a shadow across the open sea. Moonrise crowns the sea with silver, a path of trembling light stretched from horizon to hull. The men row softly, unwilling to break the spell, each stroke dipping into water that glimmers like molten glass. Their silence holds the weight of what they have passed, the hollow still echoing in bone and marrow. The boy leans against the gunwale, his rune pressed to his chest, and gazes into that shining trail, as though it might carry them out of the Kraken's reach. Yet he knows better. Once seen, the shadow abides. Once felt, the presence follows. The sea does not return what it has claimed, even if what it claims is only memory. Old Tosti speaks at last, his voice low, carried only as far as the boy's ear. He says that long ago, skalds sang of the Kraken not as monster alone, but as mirror. To see it is to see one's measure reflected. Some meet it with greed, casting nets in waters that do not belong to them, and they sink beneath the weight of their own hunger. Others meet it with terror, and their fear makes them brittle, breaking before the sea even reaches for them. But a few meet it with awe, and though they cannot master it, they endure, returning home with stories that outlast flesh. The boy listens, shivering not from cold but from the strange certainty that his own measure is being taken even now. The night deepens. Stars scatter above like salt across black cloth, their reflection broken upon the restless water. The captain stands at the tiller, gaze fixed on that faint seam where sky and sea bleed into one another. He has no map for these waters, only instinct, only the quiet sense that they are being guided by a hand not his own. He accepts it without struggle. Men command ships, the sea commands men. To resist is folly, to surrender is wisdom. His shoulders are heavy, but his will remains steady as stone. Toward dawn, the wind falls silent, and with it the sea grows glassy once more. The longship drifts, caught in a breathless pause, the men resting their oars across their knees. Then the first sign comes, a ripple widening without cause, circling them as though drawn by an invisible hand. The water stirs with pale froth, spreading into rings larger and larger, until the entire horizon seems to pulse. The boy grips his rune, heart beating hard, and stares down into the depths. He sees no shape, no limb, no eye, only darkness, vast and impenetrable. Yet in that darkness he feels watched, measured, remembered. The men whisper prayers. Some trace runes upon the planks, others kiss tokens hanging at their throats. Old Toasty simply bows his head, his silence an offering. Then the water rises, not sharply, not violently, but in a slow, immense heave, lifting the long ship as though upon the chest of some great sleeper. The keel groans, oars slide against locks, and the ship tilts. For a breathless moment they ride high, staring across a sea reshaped into concentric ridges of foam. The boy gasps, his voice caught between terror and awe. He knows the Kraken moves beneath, its body so vast it reshapes the ocean's skin with the bare act of stirring. The swell lowers, the ship descends gently, as if placed back upon the water by unseen hands. The men exhale, though no laughter follows, only reverence. To be spared is as great a burden as to be threatened, for it demands gratitude no word can fully give. The captain closes his eyes and breathes deeply, steadying himself, then lifts his head to the horizon. He senses the Kraken is not done. It has not shown them its full form, only brushed them with fragments, teaching by glimpses, shaping them with silence. He wonders what debt such lessons carry, and whether any mortal can repay. That evening, the sea gifts them calm. Fish leap in arcs of silver, gulls cry with ease, and the sky blushes with fire as the sun sinks. The men smile for the first time in days, eating heartily, sharing quiet words. Yet beneath their relief runs an unspoken current. For all know the peace is temporary. The boy lies back against coiled rope, watching stars kindle one by one, and feels the Kraken beneath his thoughts like a deep drone in a distant hall. It is not menace alone he senses, but patience, endless and inexhaustible. The creature waits, the sea waits, and waiting is often more fearsome than storm. Sleep comes slowly, carrying dreams of coils vast as valleys, of an eye the size of the moon gazing upward, unblinking. He wakes with dawn's first blush and sees the captain already at the tiller, old Tosti, humming his tuneless chant. The crew quiet as shadows. They push forward, their oars dipping once more into waters that feel heavier than before. Ahead, the horizon glimmers faintly, but the boy feels no comfort. The sea is drawing them deeper, not in distance alone, but into mystery itself. And somewhere beneath, the Kraken turns again in its silent patience, preparing perhaps to rise nearer to the surface than ever before. The first lift is barely a touch, a breath pressed from below that rounds the water and sets the longship swaying, as if rocked by a careful hand. The captain does not speak. His silence is a drawn bow held for necessity. Old Tosti feels it in his knees, an ache that belongs to depth as much as age. He closes his eyes and listens, counting the long vowels of the sea. The boy, awake beyond waking, senses not danger first but attention, the way a sleeping hall stirs when a door opens softly. The second lift comes with purpose. The longship rises until men see farther than they should, a sudden horizon they do not deserve. For a heartbeat the world is all rounded light and circling foam. Then a limb breaches beside the prow, not striking, only tasting night. It is close enough to touch. Barnacles bloom along it like frost-bitten stars. Suckers open and close with patient rhythm. Coins presented and taken back by an unseen priest. The limb leans toward the dragon head and holds there as if in greeting, before folding back into the sea. The boy reaches, purely by wonder, and the captain's hand catches his wrist. Not harshly, only to teach that wonder must carry manners in a holy house. The limb curves away and sinks, rolling a heavy swell under the hull. The ship tips and rights itself, timbers talking in their elder tongue. Old Tosti breathes, the way men breathe when lightning misses the roof by a finger's width. Yet he smiles, because the gesture was a question, and not a verdict. Dawn blades the sky. Upon that blade the captain makes a choice. Hunger has followed them too long. Barrels are low, cheeks are hollow. A crew must eat to keep reverence from curdling into superstition. He nods once, and two men cast a narrow net, small as mercy, meant to take only what the sun asks them to take. Threads descend into milkish water. For a moment nothing resists. Then the net grows heavy, heavier than its size deserves, as if the sea has decided to lend its hand. "Hold, old Toasty," whispers, but the whisper is a leaf in wind. The men strain. The rope sings high and thin. A stitch pulled too hard. The long ship heels, taking a gulp of green, and runs level again. When the net clears the surface, it drips not with fish, but with a fringe of wrack and a scatter of broken shells, each crushed inward as though a mountain had closed its fist. The weight is wrong for what it shows. It is the weight of attention. The sea replies. Bubbles rise in rings that cross and cross again, a weaving like chain mail. The keel lifts once more, but not so gently. A shadow passes under them, broad as a field. Men hold breath without being told. The boy feels a thought moving near him, slow and exact, like a tide deciding which stones to bless. He understands that the gift of more than enough is also a test, that the Kraken's scales are not for iron, but for measure. They are set down. Calm returns, though calm is not quite the word. The air vibrates as after bells. The captain has the net in. It comes easily now, light as if emptied by a careful hand beneath. Within it lies a single fish, small and ordinary, its gold eye bright with a life that knows only water and hunger. The captain releases it. It flicks once and vanishes, carrying no story at all. The men look at one another and find their mouths dry. Smallness, they remember, is a craft. Day grows. With day comes a wind that smells of far cliffs and sun on lichened stone. They raise sail. The canvas rounds, yet the sea travels with them inside their bones. The boy looks astern and sees the pale patch lingering as a bruise under skin. He cannot shake the sense that the Kraken has changed because they have changed. Or perhaps they have changed because it has looked at them long enough to rephrase them in its memory. Toward evening, they come upon a slick of floating drift logs chewed pale by salt kelp in snarled braids, a bleached spar. The captain has the oars hold while the ship noses through. Among the debris, the boy sees a length of rope looped into knots he does not know. Runes are carved along the spar. Some he can read, some have been eaten into riddles by water. Old Toasty frowns. The grammar of ships that did not finish their sentence. Night returns. The aurora lays a low green hand across the poleward sky. Men settle their cloaks and close their eyes, not to sleep at once, but to rehearse the memory until it holds still. The boy watches stars shiver in the water. He rehearses too, but the memory will not be persuaded. It keeps opening of its own accord, showing the limb by the prow, the shells crushed by invisible intention, the single spared fish flashing away. He imagines the Kraken below, turned slightly on its side, to listen better. He wonders whether the creature stores tales the way it stores currents, if it keeps them coiled and warm in the chambers of its body. If mercy is a temperature there, the thought comforts him. It also frightens him, because mercy that old might not resemble any mercy he knows. Before sleep finds him, a faint tremor passes through the hull, too small to wake the others. It feels not like warning, but like a farewell for now, the way a host touches your sleeve when you leave his door in the blue hour. The boy answers without words, with the ease of his breath. Above him, cold stars keep their indifferent watch. Below, the deep keeps its considerate one. Between them, a ship moves on, learning how to be the size of its gratitude. Far below, something turns once, patient as winter, and the keel answers, in kind. The keel carries the memory of that farewell tremor, a pulse that lingers even as dawn smears the horizon with faint pink and grey. The men rise from their cloaks heavy with silence, each one aware that sleep has not erased the weight pressing upon them. The sea looks harmless in its morning calm, a pale mirror stirred only by oar and breeze, yet all know they are still within the creature's gaze. The boy stretches his aching arms, tracing the rune at his chest, and feels its edges sharper now, as though it has absorbed the depth's intention and kept it alive within him. The captain steers them toward open water where no islands break the swell. His face is steady, but his eyes do not leave the horizon. He senses what the others sense. The Kraken has grown nearer. It is not only below, it is around them, within the silence that rests too heavily upon the air. Old Toasty hums his wordless tune, low and steady, as though it might steady the very timbers of the ship. His voice is not song but anchor, binding the men to rhythm when fear could scatter them like gulls. By midday the sea shifts again. The water thickens with strange colour, green folded into black, streaked with pale milk as if churned from within. The oars drag as though moving through syrup, and the men glance toward the captain for counsel. He lifts his hand for stillness. They let the current take them, their silence now heavy as prayer. The boy leans over the side and sees long shadows beneath, too broad for fish, too slow for whale. His breath catches, for he knows they are tracing the motion of limbs vast as valleys. The Kraken circles. The first sign comes as abundance. Fish surge to the surface in wild leaps, breaking water in frantic silver arcs. They fling themselves against the hull, some landing on deck, flapping with blind desperation. The men watch with horror rather than joy, for they know this is not bounty freely given, but a tide driven by will. Old Toasty mutters that the sea is showing them its appetite, reminding them how small they are beside it. The captain orders the fish thrown back, each one sliding over the edge with a splash. The men obey quickly. lest their hesitation be mistaken for greed. The water grows pale around them, a broad slick spreading outward in a circle. The smell rises, brine sharp, but mixed with a cellar's sweetness, a scent of time stored too long in dark places. Bubbles rise in patient ranks, rings spreading wider until they reach the edges of sight. The ship sways gently, held in a grip both vast and careful. The boy presses the rune against his heart, trembling not from cold, but from the weight of awareness pressing into his bones. He imagines the Kraken's eye far below, open and steady, watching without haste, judging not only their presence but their intent. Then the sea lifts. Slowly, steadily, the keel rises as though borne upon the back of a mountain. The men grip their benches, breath trapped in their throats, as the horizon drops away, leaving them gazing farther than mortal eyes are meant to. For a breathless moment it feels as though they are sailing upon land itself, upon an island that breathes. The boy dares to look over the edge and sees what no tale had prepared him for. A sweep of flesh vast as a meadow, barnacles glinting like scattered gems, water coursing off its ridges in silver streams. He cannot see its end. It stretches beyond vision, a living continent stirring beneath them. The captain bows his head. Old Toasty closes his eyes, lips moving in soundless reverence. The men sit frozen, each one clutched by awe so great it numbs terror. The boy feels tears sting his eyes, not from fear but from the unbearable immensity of it. He understands then why men call it island and mountain, why stories falter when trying to name its shape. The Kraken is not creature alone, it is geography, a body that bends the sea to its will, a presence that shifts the very map of the world. The swell lingers, holding them aloft, then lowers, the sea swallowing the mountain back into its depths. Foam circles outward, waves collapsing into ripples until calm resumes. The ship rocks gently once more, as though nothing had happened. But each man knows they have been carried across the body of legend itself, and that knowledge carves them as surely as storm or hunger. They row on in silence, their strokes light, reverent, unwilling to break the fragile peace left behind. The boy's heart pounds still, but inside him grows something steadier than fear. He feels bound to the creature now, not by chain but by recognition, as though both he and the Kraken have acknowledged one another's existence. It is not kinship, but it is more than distance. He senses the creature carries him now within its endless memory, as it carries storms, wrecks, and ages of tide. As night falls, the aurora flames brighter, green veils dancing across the stars as though heaven itself echoes what they have seen below. The men lie in silence, listening to the sea breathe around them, too humbled for words. The boy stays awake longer than the others, his eyes wide upon the sky. He knows the Kraken is not finished. It has risen once, showing its back, and such revelations are never given without purpose. Something waits ahead, vast and patient. He does not know if it will be mercy or judgment, only that they will not sail untouched into another dawn. Aurora fades with dawn, its green fire dissolving into a sky veined with rose and ash. The long ship drifts through this half-light like a thought too heavy to vanish. The men wake stiff and silent, eyes hollowed by wonder rather than sleep. Their hands move with caution, even in simple tasks, tightening ropes, trimming sail, as if every motion must now acknowledge what bore them high. The day before, the boy rises slowly, clutching his rune, his chest still tight with the memory of that vast living continent beneath them. He knows they were not merely spared, they were chosen to see. The captain steers with steady hands, but inside him runs a tremor not born of fear alone. He has seen storms that could break men, ice that could shatter ships, but never a presence that shifted the world with such quiet grace. The Kraken revealed its back, yet kept its face hidden. The restraint unsettles him more than any attack might. Mercy, when it comes from something so absolute, feels heavier than wrath. He wonders what purpose lay in that glimpse, what fate the sea prepares for them next. Old Tusty sits hunched near the mast, fingers working a length of cord into knots. His lips move with murmured words, not prayer but remembrance. He recalls other tales, older than his youth, told by men long since vanished, stories of ships lifted high, not returned, their timbers crushed against one another like kindling until only fragments floated. He recalls too the tale of a fisher who swore he looked upon an eye wide as his cottage roof, staring upward without blink, and afterward that man never set foot on water again. Tusty hums softly, finishing his knot, a charm against memory that might grow too sharp. The sea shifts by midday, not in violence but in texture. The swell thickens, rolling with weight, as though the water itself carries the residue of some great body moving far below. The men glance uneasily at the horizon. Whales surface nearby, their spouts brief pillars of breath before they vanish again. Heading outward, away, to see whales flee unsettles them deeply, for these giants akin to storms, never easily displaced. The boy watches their retreat and feels his own smallness sharpen into ache. If even whales yield, what strength can men claim? The air grows heavy, carrying a sweetness like rotting fruit, mingled with salt. The boy coughs against it, and old Tosti mutters that they sail above a feeding ground. The Kraken does not gnash or tear as beasts of land. Its summon schools of fish gather in irresistible swarms, drawn as if by unseen gravity, then collapse inward. The sea feeds itself, patient and inexorable, needing no frenzy. The boy imagines the vast arms slowly closing, the dark maw opening like a cave, fish pouring into it, until silence follows. He trembles, not at violence, but at inevitability. The men begin to speak less, for words feel fragile against such knowledge. They row in rhythm, their silence a pact. Even the captain, who keeps his post as stone, keeps its cliff, says little. Only his eyes roam ceaselessly across the darkening water, scanning for signs too subtle for the untrained. He knows each ripple is message, each stillness a decision. To command here is not to lead, but to listen. By evening the horizon glows faintly with the dying sun, red smearing across waves that heave with unseen weight. The boy, unable to resist, peers again over the side. This time he sees more, faint pale shapes far below, circular and enormous, drifting open and closed. He realizes they are suckers, each broad enough to engulf him whole, each carrying its own rim of barnacles and scars. His breath quickens, and he pulls back, yet he cannot unsee it. The Kraken is rising, not in full, not yet, but nearer, closer than before. The longship rocks, caught upon ripples that spread outward in calm concentric rings. The men sit frozen, their oars lifted, the sail slack. The sea grows pale, bubbling with faint froth. A dome swells, not breaking surface, but high enough that the keel tilts steeply before sliding down again. The boy clutches his rune, eyes wide with terror and awe, while old Toasty whispers that the creature is testing them, gauging what manner of men they are. Mercy and judgment, he says, walk together in such trials, and mortals cannot tell them apart until the verdict is done. The swell subsides, but silence lingers heavy. The men lower their oars once more, rowing with slow care, as though each stroke must petition the depths for permission. The captain's hand is steady, but his eyes burn with questions he dares not voice. Why reveal only fragments? Why grant vision yet withhold face? He senses a pattern unfolding, though its meaning lies beyond his grasp, as though the sea itself writes a riddle too vast for mortal tongue. Night deepens, stars unveiling themselves one by one. The aurora shimmers faintly, a green smear across heaven's northern brow. The boy lies upon his cloak, unable to sleep. His thoughts churn with images of vast suckers drifting in the dark, of an eye hidden but near. He knows they are moving towards something greater, a revelation not yet shown. He closes his eyes, pressing the rune to his chest, and whispers into the stillness. If it waits for them, let them be ready. Far below, in chambers no light touches, the Kraken turns slowly, patient as eternity, preparing its next gesture. Dawn emerges with a grey reluctance. Clouds stretch thin like worn cloth, their edges trembling with hidden light. The long ship drifts across water that feels too calm, as though the sea itself is waiting for something to unfold. The men row without speaking, each stroke measured, each breath subdued. They have seen enough to know that silence is not emptiness. It is the language of the deep, a space left open for what may rise. The boy holds his rune tight, his palms sweaty against its carved edges, and wonders if the Kraken feels it beating like a second heart. The captain keeps his eyes upon the horizon, though his thoughts sink downward. He feels the presence below not as threat alone, but as weight, a gravity tugging at his marrow. He senses that they are no longer sailing through chance, but through design, that the sea has led them here to witness something beyond the reach of ordinary men. His jaw tightens with both dread and acceptance. To refuse what is given by the ocean is to court ruin. To accept it is to surrender certainty. He knows which path they tread. Old Tosti sits with his hands resting on the worn wood, his eyes half closed, humming his chant in time with the oars. His voice is low, broken, like a rope frayed with years, yet it steadies the crew. He murmurs of tales older than kings, stories where the Kraken did not merely destroy, but reveal, showing men their own hearts mirrored in its immensity. Those who faced it with arrogance were broken. Those who faced it with despair were swallowed by their own emptiness. Only those who faced it with reverence endured, carrying its memory like a brand upon their souls. The boy listens, and his chest tightens with the fear that he may not be strong enough to hold such a brand. By midday, the water changes. It grows dense, black-green as though thickened by unseen currents. The air tastes sharp, metallic, biting against the tongue. Birds vanish, their cries swallowed before they can form. The men shift uneasily, their oars dragging with unnatural heaviness. Then the first sign appears, a slick of foam stretching wide as a field, trembling with bubbles that rise in deliberate rhythm. The long ship slows, caught in the strange stillness at its centre. The sea heaves, not with storm but with something deeper. A bulge rises, slow and steady, pressing upward until the keel tilts. The men clutch the benches, breath caught. Eyes wide, the boy dares to look, and what he sees burns into him forever. A portion of the Kraken's body breaching the surface, vast and glistening, barnacle-crusted and ridged with ancient scars. Water streams down its flesh in rivers, each droplet a bead of light against the dark mass. The smell of salt and age fills the air, thick enough to choke. For a moment it does not move. It simply lies there, an island birthed from the deep, larger than the ship could ever dream to measure. The boy trembles, his heart caught between terror and awe. He realizes then that no tale, no skald's verse, no whispered warning by firelight has ever captured this truth. To behold the Kraken is not to face a beast, but to confront the scale of creation itself. Then, with emotion slow as mountains shifting, a limb rises from the water. It arcs high, dripping sheets of foam, each sucker wide enough to engulf a man. The limb curls gracefully, not striking, but tracing a path through the air like a quill writing across sky. It lowers beside the ship, stirring waves that rock the vessel, but do not overturn it. The men sit frozen, unable to breathe, unable to move. The boy stares at the limb, so near he could touch it, and feels tears spill unbidden. He does not understand why he weeps, only that he has been seen. The captain bows his head, his hands trembling upon the tiller. Old Tosti whispers that they must not cry out, must not raise hand or weapon, for this is not an attack, but a revelation. He tells them the Kraken shows itself fully only to those it has chosen, and choice is never without cost. His voice quivers, but his chant continues. a thread of steadiness drawn through the storm of awe. The limb lingers, its suckers opening and closing with slow rhythm, a soundless breath. Then it withdraws, sliding back into the sea with a sigh that pulls water into its wake. Foam swirls in circles, waves collapsing in upon themselves. The longship rocks violently, but does not capsize. Slowly the sea stills, returning to an uneasy calm. The men remain silent, their faces pale, their eyes wide. No one speaks, for words feel too fragile, too shallow to name what has passed. The boy leans against the gunwale, exhausted, his chest burning with the weight of wonder. He knows that his life, however long it may stretch, will never escape this moment. He has seen the Kraken, not as shadow or hint, but as body and presence. Night falls, heavy and starless, clouds smothering the sky. The men lie restless, their dreams haunted by pale suckers and ridged flesh, by the soundless weight of immensity moving just below. The boy presses his rune to his chest and closes his eyes, whispering to himself that they were spared. Yet even in that whisper lies a question. Spared for what? The sea answers only with silence, and far below the Kraken waits, patient, preparing for what must come next. The night presses heavy with cloud, its darkness unbroken by moon or star. The sea moves beneath the longship, in a slow, restless rhythm, as if echoing the vast body stirring far below. The men lie sleepless, each one caught within the memory of that colossal limb rising and falling like a mountain, learning to breathe. The boy curls against the coiled rope, his rune clenched to his chest, and wonders why the Kraken allowed them to witness what so few have lived to tell. His thoughts circle between awe and dread, unable to settle, like gulls restless before a storm. At dawn the horizon smoulders, the sun hidden behind a veil of ash-coloured cloud. The air tastes of iron and brine, sharp enough to sting the throat. The captain stands at the tiller, eyes narrowed, reading the language of sky and sea. He feels a tightening in the current, as though the waters are not merely moving, but being drawn inward toward a centre. He knows the Kraken is close, closer than before, and that the creature's silence weighs heavier than any storm. Old Tosti mutters to himself as he winds cord around his hand, his chant broken into fragments. He recalls tales where the Kraken's surfacing was not omen but judgment, where ships were lifted and crushed not out of hunger but out of decree. He warns in a whisper that such revelations always carry price. The boy listens, his heart trembling, yet he cannot help but lean closer, desperate to learn what fate might be hidden in the old man's half-remembered songs. The water darkens through the day, its colour shifting to a heavy green-black, its surface broken by rising patches of foam. The men row cautiously, their strokes shallow, as if afraid to disturb the fragile boundary between surface and abyss. Then the first tremor comes, deep, resonant, vibrating through wood and bone alike. The ship quivers, not from wave, but from something vast stirring beneath. The boy grips the gunwale, his breath caught, and feels that the Kraken has turned its full attention upon them at last. The sea swells, not swiftly, but with inexorable force. The bow lifts high, the horizon tilting, then lowers again with a slow descent. Another swell follows, greater than the first, lifting them as though the ship rests upon the back of something immense rising from below. Foam spreads outward, circles widening until they touch the edge of sight. The men clutch ropes and benches, eyes wide with terror and awe. The boy looks down and sees shadows moving beneath the froth, limbs unfurling, vast arcs of flesh curving through the water like valleys come alive. Then it rises, not in fragments, not in hints, but with dreadful majesty. The sea heaves upward, and the Kraken's head breaches the surface at last. It towers above the ship, barnacle-crusted and ridged with scars carved by centuries. Water streams down its mass in rivers, crashing back into the sea with thunderous sound. The smell of salt and age fills the air, thick and overwhelming, mingled with something older, the scent of earth buried deep beneath ocean for uncounted ages. The eye opens, vast, unblinking, pale as moonstone, yet burning with an inner light. It gazes down upon the longship. The men freeze, their hearts stilled, their voices stolen. The boy stares upward, tears running unbidden down his cheeks. In that gaze he feels himself unmade and remade, stripped of all pretense, weighed not as sailor or boy, but as soul. The Kraken's eye holds no cruelty, yet it bears no mercy as men understand it. It is judgment pure and timeless, the sea's decree written into flesh. The captain bows his head, his body trembling though his hands remain steady on the tiller. He understands then what all their journey has led to. Not survival alone, but revelation. They are not here by chance, but chosen to witness, to carry the weight of sight. Old Tosti whispers words that tremble into silence, prayers older than memory, his chant breaking into tears. The Kraken lingers, its head swaying slowly, its eye fixed upon them. The sea around the ship boils with bubbles, foam rising in endless rings. The men cling to the timbers, their hearts caught between terror and worship. The boy presses the rune to his chest, so hard it leaves a mark, as though carving into him the bond that now binds his life to the creature's gaze. Then, as slowly as it rose, the Kraken sinks. Its head lowers, water closing over barnacled ridges, the pale eye fading into shadow. Waves crash outward, rocking the ship with violent force, but it holds. The sea stills again, leaving only froth and silence in its wake. The men collapse onto their benches, their breaths ragged, their eyes hollow with awe. No one speaks, for words cannot survive such sight. The boy lies back, staring at the grey sky, his chest burning with the memory of that eye. He knows he will never escape it. It has entered him, claimed him, marked him as surely as the rune he carries. The night falls heavy once more, the aurora hidden behind clouds, the stars unseen. The ship drifts in uneasy calm, the men too shaken to rest. The boy closes his eyes, whispering a prayer not for safety, but for strength, to endure what is still to come. Far below, the Kraken moves again, its patience endless, its will unfolding. For though it has shown its face, the sea keeps more yet to reveal, and judgment once begun is never easily finished. The night after the eye has looked upon them feels like a night without sky. No stars break through the thick shroud, no aurora paints the heavens with mercy. Only darkness presses close as if the world has been folded inward, ship and men sealed within the sea's endless chest. The crew lies silent, each man awake despite exhaustion, their minds bound to the pale gaze that stripped them bare. The boy clutches his rune so tightly his hand aches, yet still he fears it may not be enough. How can wood and carving defend against a memory carved into the soul? The captain does not sleep. He stands at the stern, staring into the black horizon, though sight has little meaning in such absence. What he saw that day has burned through his certainty, yet it has also deepened his resolve. He knows they are in the Kraken's hands, or its will, and that struggle is useless. But acceptance is not the same as surrender. To steer a ship through waters claimed by such a being requires steadiness, and steadiness requires belief. Belief that endurance itself is worth something to the sea. Old Tosti hums again, though his voice is cracked, frayed by awe. His chant is softer now, broken by pauses, yet it continues as if his breath alone keeps the crew tethered to the surface. He remembers sagas where men returned from such encounters no longer whole, their minds unmoored, their voices forever carrying tones of the deep. He fears for the boy most, so young, so impressionable, so open to the rune's burden. Yet when he glances at him, curled against the ropes, eyes wide in darkness, he sees not only terror but a strange steadiness, as though the boy has accepted that his life is no longer his own. At dawn the clouds part just enough for a faint wash of light to slip across the water. The sea is unnaturally calm, its skin smooth as hammered bronze. The men row with care, each stroke measured, afraid to disturb the stillness. Then the current changes. It does not pull backward or forward, but downward, dragging as though the ship itself has gained weight. The oars resist, groaning in the locks, and the long ship sinks lower into the water, though no wave has risen. The boy grips the gunwale, breath shallow. He feels the pull not only in his arms but in his chest, his very heart tugged toward the abyss. The captain orders them to hold oars steady. The ship drifts, surrendering to the invisible gravity. Foam blooms ahead, pale and wide, spreading in circles as though some colossal wheel is turning beneath. The water darkens, and then shapes appear. Vast arcs curving below the surface, limbs coiling and uncoiling with slow deliberation. The Kraken is not rising this time. It is circling, wrapping them in its embrace as though drawing them inward toward its core. The boy sees flashes, suckers drifting past, each one glistening like a moon, scars etched into the flesh, reminders of battles fought in ages men cannot imagine, currents bending with its motion, the entire sea reshaped by its will. His chest tightens with awe. He whispers a prayer, though he does not know to whom, whether to the gods above or to the being that moves like a god below. Then it comes. The surface bulges, and a limb breaches fully, curling high into the air. Water pours off it in sheets, cascading down upon the deck like sudden rain. The men cry out, covering their heads, yet the limb does not strike. It hovers above them, tracing the air, then lowers slowly toward the ship. The boy stares upward, heart hammering, and for a moment believes it will crush them, but instead, the tip rests gently against the dragonhead prow, pressing it as one might touch a mark upon a page. The wood groans, but does not break. The gesture is deliberate. The Kraken is writing upon them, branding them with its presence. The limb withdraws, sliding back into the depths with a sound like mountains shearing. The sea shudders, foam swirling, but the ship remains upright. The men sit frozen, drenched, trembling. The captain lowers his head, accepting what has been given, though his heart quails. Old Tosti whispers that they are no longer merely travellers. They are witness, chosen to carry a story heavier than flesh can bear. The current steadies, the water calming as though nothing had passed. But the boy feels it still. The pressure, the gaze, the certainty that they are being drawn, step by step into a revelation no mortal tongue is meant to hold. He closes his eyes, pressing the rune against his chest until it hurts, and whispers into the silence, "Let me endure." Far below, the Kraken stirs again, its patience vast as time, its will unfolding like a tide that cannot be turned. The days that follow feel suspended, as though the ship has slipped out of time's river, and now floats upon another current altogether. The sea bears them onward, but no man speaks of direction, for it is plain that the tiller no longer governs their fate. The captain holds it still, his hands steady upon the worn wood, but he knows the truth. The Kraken has claimed their voyage, and they are passengers upon its will. The men sense it too, rowing not as masters but as servants, each stroke an offering of obedience to the deep. The boy wakes each morning with the rune pressed hard into his chest, the imprint lingering on his skin. He feels it pulsing faintly, as though the wood itself now carries a heartbeat borrowed from the abyss. He does not tell the others, fearing they will see it as cursed. Yet in secret he whispers to it, not in prayer, but in acknowledgement, as though speaking to the unseen gaze that still follows him from beneath. He no longer doubts that the Kraken has bound itself to him in some way, though whether for mercy or for trial, he cannot know. The sea shifts colour with each passing hour, green giving way to black, black softening into grey, as though the ocean itself cannot settle. Flocks of birds wheel far overhead, never drawing near, their cries faint like echoes from another world. Whales are absent, dolphins gone, only silence remains, broken by the dip of oars and the creak of timber. It is a silence that grows heavier each day, pressing against skin, against thought, until even dreams carry its weight. On the third day, the first true sign comes. The water beneath them grows pale, spreading outward in a vast circle. Foam rises, swirling as though stirred by a colossal spoon. Then the sea lifts, slow and deliberate, raising the ship upon its back. The men clutch their benches, wide-eyed but silent. The boy dares to look down and sees once more the sweep of flesh, barnacled and scarred, gleaming in the faint light. His breath catches, not in terror, but in reverence. To behold such immensity is to glimpse eternity in motion. Then it rises higher. The water parts, and a limb breaks the surface, curling upward like a tree reaching for sky. Foam cascades from it in rivers, drenching the men, blinding them with salt spray. The limb hangs above them, its suckers opening and closing with a sound like breath drawn through hollow stone. It does not strike. Instead, it hovers, tracing a slow circle in the air, as though marking them with a seal unseen. The boy trembles, heart pounding. Yet he feels no urge to flee. He feels instead as though he is being written into a story too vast for words. The captain bows his head. Old Tosti whispers again, his chant trembling but unbroken. He murmurs that the Kraken has entered its full revelation, that what they now witness is not threat but truth. The sea does not raise itself for sport. It shows its face only when meaning demands. He warns that meaning is never without cost. The men listen, their faces pale, their hands clenched, each one knowing that to be chosen as witness is as heavy a fate as to be swallowed. The limb withdraws slowly, sliding back into the sea. But the swell remains, rocking the ship in rhythm with the creature's unseen motion. Then a sound rises from below, not roar, not cry, but a deep resonance that vibrates through hull and bone alike. The boy feels it in his marrow, his teeth aching with the hum. It is not language as men speak, but it carries intent. He knows it in his soul. The Kraken is calling, not to destroy, but to summon. The sea steadies, foam fades. The ship drifts again upon calm water, yet none aboard feel calm. They know the deep has spoken, though they cannot name its words. The captain's jaw is set, his eyes fixed on the horizon with grim acceptance. Old Tosti hums still, though his voice is softer now, fragile as a thread in wind. The boy sits trembling, his rune pressed against his heart, and whispers into the silence, "We have been chosen." Night falls with a sky clear at last, stars scattered in their endless choir, yet even their beauty feels small compared to what stirs beneath. The aurora flickers faintly, a green veil stretching across the heavens, mirroring the veils of foam they saw upon the sea. The men lie restless, unable to sleep, their minds caught in the rhythm of the deep hum. The boy remains awake longest, staring upward, then downward, trapped between two immenses, sky and sea, each reflecting the other. He knows the Kraken is not finished. The limb that hovered above them was not strike but promise, not ending but beginning. Far below, the creature moves with patience, its will unfolding like a tide that cannot be resisted. The boy feels it as surely as he feels his own breath. They are being led to a confrontation greater than storm, greater than hunger, greater than fear itself. And though he trembles, he whispers to the rune in his hand that he will endure whatever truth the sea has yet to unveil. The dawn that breaks is unlike any the crew has ever known. The horizon glows faintly, not with the soft blush of ordinary sunrising, but with a pale radiance, as if the sea itself has drawn light upward from its own depth. Mist coils low over the water, wrapping the ship in veils that blur the line between waking and dream. Each man stirs slowly, their movements hesitant, as though some instinct warns them that the air they breathe is not wholly their own. The boy sits upright, rune clutched tight, his eyes fixed upon the glimmering veil ahead. He feels in his bones that they are being drawn closer to the Kraken's heart, not just to its body, but to its purpose. The oars slip almost soundlessly into the water. The sea gives little resistance, guiding them forward as though carrying them in invisible hands. The captain keeps his gaze straight ahead, his face set with grim serenity. He knows they cannot turn aside, yet his heart pounds with the knowledge that they sail toward trial, not escape. He feels the burden of his men's trust like weight across his shoulders, heavier even than the gaze of the abyss below. Old Tosti hums again, though the tone has changed, no longer a chant of memory. It has become one of pleading, a bridge cast upward from fragile voice to infinite silence. He sings of balance, of sea and sky, of man and monster, of the endless circle that binds creation together. His eyes shine with tears as he hums, for he knows that to face the Kraken is to face the wheel of fate itself, and few men are made to bear such sight. The water around them grows restless. Patches of foam bloom in strange, deliberate patterns, spirals spreading wider until they encircle the ship. The men watch with wide eyes, their breaths caught. The boy feels his heart race as he realizes the spirals mirror the pattern carved upon his rune, as though the Kraken itself is answering the mark he carries. He presses the wood against his chest, trembling at the thought that he has been marked not by chance, but by destiny. Then the sea opens. With a motion vast and unhurried, the surface bulges, and from it rises not a limb nor a head, but the Kraken entire, an emergence beyond comprehension. Its body heaves upward, immense as a mountain breaking the sea apart. Water cascades down its ridges in torrents, crashing back with the thunder of waterfalls. The ship rocks wildly, yet does not capsize, as though the creature itself steadies it with unseen care. The men fall silent, their mouths open, their eyes reflecting the impossible scale before them. The boy cannot breathe for a moment, the sight too immense to fit within his chest. The Kraken looms above, limbs spread outward like the roots of some eternal tree, suckers glowing faintly with pale light as though lit from within. Its head rises higher, and the great eye opens once more, pale and unblinking, gazing down upon them with a calm that is more terrifying than rage. In that gaze, time itself seems to bend. The boy sees visions flicker in the eye's depths, storms raging, ships shattering, men drowning, but also calm seas, children playing by the shore, nets heavy with fish. He sees life and death entwined, destruction and bounty woven together as strands of the same thread. He gasps, tears spilling freely, for he understands in that moment what no tale had ever captured. The Kraken is not merely terror, but balance, the embodiment of the sea's gift and its demand. The captain drops to his knees, unable to withstand the weight of that gaze. Old Tosti whispers hoarsely, naming gods and ancestors, his chant now a prayer not for salvation, but for strength to endure the truth. The men bow their heads, some weeping, some rigid with awe. The boy alone dares to look, his body trembling yet his heart held by the rune's strange steadiness. He feels the Kraken's gaze not as judgment alone, but as question. The hum begins again, rising from the depths. It vibrates through wood and flesh, through marrow and thought. The boy feels it shaping itself into meaning, not words but truth pressing against his mind. He hears it as a call, not to flee, not to fight, but to recognize, to see himself not as master of the sea, nor as victim, but as part of the circle the Kraken embodies. He grips the rune so tightly it cuts into his palm, blood mingling with salt water, and whispers into the roar of silence. I see. The Kraken lingers, its limbs swaying slowly, the water swirling with its vast breath. For a long moment the world holds still, ship and sea bound within the presence of something eternal. Then, with a motion slow and inexorable, the creature begins to sink once more. Its limbs fold inward, its eye closes, and the sea swallows its bulk. Waves crash outward, rocking the ship with violence, then subside into uneasy calm. The men lie sprawled, broken by awe, their faces pale, their bodies trembling. The captain covers his face with his hands. Old Tosti weeps softly, his chant fallen silent at last. The boy alone remains upright, his eyes fixed upon the rippling sea where the Kraken vanished. He knows it is not gone. He knows it has bound itself to them, that its revelation is not complete. As night descends, the aurora shimmers once more, pale green across the heavens, mirroring the glow he saw within the Kraken's suckers. The boy lies awake, rune clutched against his chest, and whispers to the silence that he will endure. Yet even as he says it, he feels the hum lingering in his bones, and knows the sea has not yet spoken its final word. Far below, the Kraken waits, patient as eternity, preparing the final measure of its truth. The night that follows their full encounter is thick with silence, the kind of silence that feels alive, humming just beyond hearing. The sea stretches endless and black beneath the faint shimmer of aurora, and every man aboard feels that they drift not upon water, but upon the edge of something vast and unseen. Sleep comes only in fragments, broken by dreams of pale eyes and glistening limbs. Even old Tosti does not chant. His lips move, but no sound comes, as though words have lost their strength against what has been revealed. The boy remains awake, rune clutched tight, his gaze fixed on the horizon where mist drifts low and heavy. He feels the hum still within his bones, a deep resonance that will not fade. It is not haunting but tethering, as though the Kraken has tied part of itself to him. He does not understand the purpose, but he no longer doubts its weight. The rune grows warm in his hand, pulsing faintly with each beat of his heart, as though reminding him that what has been bound cannot be unbound. At dawn, the sea shows its intent. The water is unnaturally smooth, its surface reflecting the sky like a mirror too perfect to be real. The oars slip silently, the ship gliding as though drawn by unseen current. The captain keeps his eyes fixed forward, his hands firm upon the tiller, though he knows it is the sea, not he, that chooses their path. His jaw is tight, his breath steady, but within he feels the tremor of a man leading his crew into judgment. Yet he does not turn. To resist the Kraken now would be like resisting tide or storm, futile and dangerous. By midday the air thickens. Mist rises higher, swallowing the horizon, cloaking the sea in shifting veils. The men grow restless, their whispers quick and fearful. Some pray, some grip their charms until knuckles whiten, others stare ahead with hollow eyes. Old Toasty at last finds voice, humming again, his chant trembling but resolute. The boy listens, finding in its fragile rhythm the courage to breathe. Then the sea begins to tremble, not with wave, but with motion far beneath. The ship shivers, timbers groaning as though pressed by unseen hands. Foam bursts across the surface in spirals, widening into circles that encase them like runes carved in water. The boy grips the gunwale, heart pounding, for he knows this is no mere passing. The Kraken is coming again, not in glimpse or fragment, but with intent. The water swells, and a shadow rises. First a limb breaches, curling skyward, vast and dripping, then another and another. Soon the ship is encircled, limbs rising on every side, pale suckers glowing faintly within a light, casting eerie reflection across the mist. The men freeze, their breaths ragged, caught between awe and terror. The boy stares upward, tears burning his eyes, and feels as though he has entered a temple not of stone but of flesh and sea. The surface heaves and the Kraken's head rises again, greater than before, looming with full majesty. Water cascades from its barnacled ridges in thundering streams. The great eye opens, pale as moonstone, unblinking, vast. It gazes upon them not as one gazes upon prey, but as one examines a mirror. The boy feels it press into his soul, stripping him bare, weighing him not by strength or age, but by truth. Then the hum returns, deeper, stronger, vibrating through hull and marrow alike. The men clutch their heads, groaning as though the sound itself were breaking them. Old Tosti weeps openly, whispering prayers that dissolve into sobs. The captain grips the tiller, his body rigid, refusing to bow though his knees tremble. The boy alone stares upward, his rune clutched against his chest, and hears the hum shape itself within him into meaning. It is not hunger. It is not rage. It is calling. The Kraken summons them, not to destruction, but to acknowledgement. To see, to know, to carry. The boy gasps as the truth presses into him. The creature is more than terror. It is the voice of the sea itself, demanding that men remember their place within the circle. Not masters, not victims, but participants in a balance older than gods. The eye lingers, its light searing into him. He whispers hoarsely, his voice barely more than breath. I see. Blood drips from his palm where the rune has cut into his skin, mingling with salt water. The Kraken does not move, yet he feels its gaze soften as if recognition has passed between them. The limbs sway, stirring waves that rock the ship, but do not overturn it. Foam swirls in endless spirals, echoing the rune's carving. The men huddle, trembling, unable to look. The captain closes his eyes, whispering at last. So be it. Old Toasty collapses, his chant silenced, his body shaking with both awe and exhaustion. Then, as slowly as it rose, the Kraken begins to sink. Its limbs fold inward, its head lowers, the pale eye closing. The sea swallows it, waves crashing outward before settling into heavy calm. Silence follows, thick and final, broken only by the rasp of men's breaths. The boy remains kneeling, his gaze fixed on the rippling water. He knows it is not finished. He knows the Kraken has bound them still deeper into its revelation. The rune in his hand pulses once more, warm and insistent. He presses it to his chest, trembling. Night falls again, stars veiled by mist, the aurora faint above. The ship drifts onward, crew silent, each man caught in the weight of what has passed. The boy closes his eyes but does not sleep. He whispers into the silence. We endure, and deep below the Kraken waits, patient as tide, preparing the next measure of its truth. The sea carries them onward, though none among the crew feel they are moving of their own accord. The oars rest idle more often than not, for the current draws them as surely as if unseen ropes were tethered to the keel. Mist clings low across the water, veiling horizon and sky alike, until it seems they sail through a world of grey without beginning or end. The men whisper little, their voices hushed by awe and dread. Only the sound of wood creaking and breath trembling fills the air. The captain stands tall, though weariness hangs on his shoulders. He knows they are not guiding the ship, but being guided, and this truth both steadies and unsettles him. His hands grip the tiller, not to command, but to witness. He feels the weight of responsibility shift within him. No longer is it the task of keeping men alive through skill, but through endurance of a trial none were born to bear. His heart aches for the crew, but he cannot shield them from the sea's decree. Old Toasty, frail and trembling, begins to hum again. His chant is softer than before, like smoke rising from embers nearly spent. He sings not of gods or warriors, but of circles unbroken, of life and death meeting upon the shore. The men listen, heads bowed, clinging to the fragile thread his song weaves through the silence. Even the boy, his rune pressed to his palm until blood and salt mingle, feels steadier with the old man's voice trembling through the air. The sea begins to stir, ripples spread outward, too vast, too deliberate to be born of mere wind. Foam blooms in spirals, spinning wider, until the ship lies within their centre. The boy gasps, recognizing the pattern etched into his rune. His hand trembles, and he understands the Kraken has answered the mark again. His chest tightens with awe. He whispers under his breath. It calls, then the water heaves. Limbs rise first, not one or two but many, breaching the surface in arcs that gleam with dripping light. They encircle the ship, swaying slowly, each sucker glowing faint as moons in the mist. The men cry out but fall silent as the sound of the deep hum rises again, louder than before, vibrating through hull, marrow and thought alike. It is not noise, but presence. Truth pressed into the body itself. The boy's eyes widen, tears falling unchecked, for he hears within the hum not destruction, but invitation. The sea splits, and the Kraken rises, higher than ever, vast as a living mountain. Its ridges glisten, its scars burn pale in the faint glow. Water roars down its sides in endless rivers. The great eye opens once more, immense and pale, gazing upon them with unyielding calm. The men bow their heads, unable to withstand the sight. Old Tosti weeps openly, his chant dissolving into sobs. The captain grips the tiller, jaw set, though his knees shake beneath him. The boy does not look away. The eye sears into him, stripping him bare, weighing his heart not for courage or fear, but for truth. And in that gaze he sees again visions flicker, storms and wreckage, feasts of plenty, lives cut short, lives begun. He sees kings crowned and beggars buried, sees nets bursting with fish and nets torn empty. All woven together, all held within the circle the Kraken embodies, terror and bounty, wrath and mercy, inseparable. The hum deepens, pressing harder, until the boy feels his chest might break. Yet within the pressure, meaning forms. The Kraken is not speaking words, but asking not of the ship, but of him. The boy shudders, clutching the runes so tightly it cuts deeper into his skin. He whispers hoarsely, "I see." His voice cracks, yet the words ring true. Blood drips from his hand into the sea, and for a moment he feels as though the ocean itself accepts the offering. The Kraken's limbs sway, circling the ship, stirring waves that rock them without capsizing. The great eye lingers on the boy, and though no change stirs upon its pale surface, he feels a recognition pass between them. Not mercy, not cruelty, but acknowledgement. He has answered, and the sea has heard. Then the Kraken begins to sink once more. Its limbs fold inward, its head lowers, the pale eye vanishing into shadow. Water crushes outward, drenching the men, shaking the ship, then stills. The mist closes again, swallowing horizon and sky alike. Silence reigns. The men collapse, spent, some weeping, some too hollow to speak. The captain bows his head, whispering only, "It is done," though he does not believe it. Old Tosti lies trembling, his chant extinguished, eyes closed, as though in prayer. The boy remains kneeling, his palm bleeding, the rune pressed against his chest. His breath comes shallow, his body trembling, but his spirit holds. He knows this was not the end, but the threshold. The Kraken has tested, revealed, and accepted, but what it demands in return has yet to unfold. Night falls again, stars hidden behind the mist. The ship drifts onward, no oar guiding, no wind steering. The boy stares into the dark water, whispering to the rune, "We endure." And far below, unseen, the Kraken stirs once more, preparing to complete the circle it has begun. The sea has grown strangely gentle. It swells long and slow, as if the great depths themselves have exhaled. The ship drifts through this calm with an ease that feels unnatural, as though the ocean has cradled it deliberately, rocking men toward uneasy rest. Yet none sleep deeply. Their bodies collapse into stillness, but their minds remain suspended, echoing with the hum that pressed through their bones. Even in dreams they feel it, a resonance that binds them to the vastness below. The boy lies with the rune clutched in his hand, his palms still raw where wood and blood mingled. He feels warmth pulsing faintly within the carving, a rhythm not his own. It is not comfort, but presence, reminding him with each beat that he has been seen, measured, and marked. He wonders if he is still the same boy who boarded this ship, or if something inside him has been remade by the Kraken's gaze. His heart tells him it is the latter, and he trembles not with fear but with the solemnity of it. When dawn arrives, the light is thin, almost spectral. Mist hangs heavy across the horizon, and the sea gleams like hammered glass. The captain stares into it with hollow eyes. He has long accepted that their voyage is no longer theirs to command. Yet each day the truth grows heavier. He thinks of home, of hearth fires and familiar voices, yet feels them dimmed, far away like memories dreamt rather than lived. What lives within him now is not longing for land, but the knowledge that he has steered his men into a story that will never let them go. Old Tosti sits with his head bowed, lips moving in silent rhythm. His chants have grown quieter with each passing day, his voice fraying like old rope. Now he does not sing aloud, but mouths the words, as though even breath must be spared in reverence. He knows he has lived long, but he wonders if this final witnessing is what his many years were leading toward. He feels the sea has claimed his last strength, and strangely, he does not resist. By midday the calm breaks, not in storm, but in deep, slow movement beneath. The ship trembles, timbers groaning, as though held in the hand of something vast. Foam blooms outward in concentric rings, wider than fields, circling them with precision. The men clutch the benches, their eyes darting, their hearts pounding in silence. They know what this means. The Kraken is not gone. It is not finished. The water swells, bulging upward as if the very bed of the ocean has risen. Then limbs emerge, not two or three but a forest of them, breaching in arcs all around, pale suckers gleaming faintly with inner glow. They sway in slow rhythm, vast and deliberate, encircling the ship like pillars of a temple. The boy's breath catches. He feels they have entered not open water but a sanctum, and the Kraken is both its guardian and its god. The head rises once more, greater even than before. Barnacled ridges glisten, water cascading in endless rivers from its mass. The great eye opens, pale and fathomless, gazing upon them with calm that is heavier than storm. The hum returns, deeper, denser, shaking their very marrow. The men groan, some falling to their knees, others clutching their heads as though the sound might break them. Old Tosti collapses forward, whispering fragments of prayer that dissolve in the resonance. The boy stares upward, trembling, yet he cannot look away. The eye holds him, piercing through fear, stripping away thought until only truth remains. In its pale depths he sees visions again. Men raising sails, storms devouring fleets, whales breaching in joy, mothers cradling infants by firelight, life and death, bounty and ruin, all woven inseparably. He gasps, tears burning his cheeks, for he feels the truth more clearly now. The Kraken is not merely terror, it is memory. It carries the weight of every drowning, every feast, every prayer whispered to the sea. It is the ocean's own soul, clothed in flesh. The hum sharpens, pressing into him, and he knows it, asks again, not of words but of acknowledgement. To see, to understand, to carry. His palm bleeds anew as the rune cuts deeper. He presses it to his chest and whispers, broken but steady, "I endure." His voice is small, lost in the roar of silence, but the truth in it steadies him. The great eye lingers, and though it does not change, the boy feels a shift within himself. A thread has been tied, binding him not just to this moment, but to the sea itself. The Kraken's gaze softens, not in mercy but in recognition. Then the limbs sway wider, the hum deepens, and water rises higher still, lifting the ship as though cradled upon the creature's body. The men cry out, clutching the gunwales as waves crash outward. The captain grips the tiller, eyes closed, whispering, "So be it." Old Tosti breathes raggedly, his lips forming words without sound. The boy kneels, bloodied rune pressed against his heart, gaze fixed upon the pale eye. And then, as slowly as it came, the Kraken begins to sink. Its limbs fold inward, its head lowers, the sea closing over its immensity. Waves roar outward, rocking the ship violently before the water stills once more. Mist swallows horizon and sky. Silence returns, heavy as stone. The crew lies broken in awe, their spirits hollowed by revelation. The boy remains upright, trembling but unbowed, knowing this is not the end. The sea has more yet to show, more yet to demand. He whispers into the stillness, "I will carry it," and far below, patient and vast, the Kraken stirs again, preparing to seal what it has begun. The ship drifts onward through waters that feel less like sea and more like a threshold. Mist coils around the vessel in veils, so dense that even the nearest waves blur into shifting shadows. The men sit silent, their faces hollow, their bodies weary from awe more than from toil. None ask where they are going, for they understand now that destination is not theirs to choose. The sea itself carries them, and what lies ahead is not harbour or home, but revelation. The boy kneels at the prow, his rune pressed to his bleeding palm. The wound has scabbed and broken many times, yet still he clutches it, unwilling to let go. He feels its warmth pulsing in rhythm with his heart, though he knows it beats with another will beneath his own. The memory of the Kraken's pale eye lingers, heavy and consuming, yet within that weight he has found a strange steadiness. He no longer asks why he was chosen. He asks only what he must carry, and whether his flesh is strong enough to bear it. The captain watches from the stern, eyes fixed upon the veiled horizon. He has seen storms split ships and men broken upon rocks, but nothing has hollowed him like this. His heart aches for the crew, for the boy who seems bound to the sea in ways no man should be. Yet he knows, with the clarity of salt air and long years, that to resist would be folly. To guide them now is not to command, but to endure, to keep the vessel steady until the sea itself has finished speaking. Old Tosti stirs faintly, his breath shallow, his voice reduced to whispers. He mutters fragments of chants, half prayers, half memories, his eyes glazed as though they see through veil and mist into realms beyond. He knows his strength is nearly spent, yet he smiles faintly, lips cracked, for he senses he has lived long enough to witness the truth at the heart of the ocean. Whether his body survives it no longer matters. His spirit has already entered the circle. The sea begins to move again, not with sudden violence, but with deep inevitability. The water beneath them trembles, a vibration felt more than heard. Foam rises in spirals, wider and wider, until the ship lies at their centre. The boy gasps, for he sees the pattern of his rune etched in water once more, vast and perfect. His hand trembles as he presses the carving tighter to his chest. He whispers. It calls again. Then the surface bulges, and from it emerges not only limbs but the Kraken's full immensity. Its body heaves upward, dark and glistening, ridged with scars carved by centuries. Water cascades in thunderous rivers, shaking the ship yet leaving it upright as though spared by intent. The men cower, some weeping, some rigid, their souls too frail to endure the sight. The captain lowers his head, jaw clenched. Old Tosti slumps forward, lips moving in broken prayer. The great eye opens, pale, unblinking, vast as a moon. It gazes upon them with calm beyond measure. The hum returns deeper and heavier, pressing into their bones until they can scarcely breathe. The boy feels it pierce him, not as sound but as truth. His body shakes, yet he does not look away. He sees within the eye visions uncountable. Ships dashed upon rocks, children born beside waves, offerings cast into the surf, lovers parting upon the shore, all that the sea has taken and given, bound together in one unbroken circle. The hum sharpens, carrying question, not words, but weight pressing against his heart. The boy shudders, blood dripping anew from his palm. He whispers, through trembling lips, "I will carry it." His voice is frail, but it is steady. The rune warms against his chest, glowing faintly within a fire. For a moment he feels the Kraken's gaze shift, not softer, not gentler, but acknowledging. The limbs sway, curling around the ship in a circle so vast that the vessel seems a toy upon a god's altar. The water rises, lifting them high upon swells that do not break. The men cry out, clinging to timbers, but the boy kneels, eyes locked upon the pale eye. He feels the hum enter him fully, as though his marrow has become vessel for the sea's truth. And then, with slow finality, the Kraken begins to sink once more. Its limbs fold inward, its head lowers, and the sea swallows its vastness. Waves crash outward, rocking the ship violently before calming into glassy stillness. The mist closes again, and silence falls heavier than before. The crew collapses, some fainting, some weeping quietly. The captain bows his head, whispering only, "It has bound us." Old Tosti lies motionless, lips still, his breath so faint it scarcely stirs the air. The boy remains kneeling, rune pressed against his chest, trembling but upright. His gaze lingers upon the sea, knowing the Kraken has not departed. It has sealed something into him, a weight he will never lay down. Night descends, stars veiled once more. The ship drifts in silence, carried toward an end none can yet see. The boy whispers into the stillness, "I endure," and deep below, vast and patient, the Kraken waits, preparing to bring the circle to its close. The ship drifts in silence deeper than any storm could summon. Mist wraps the vessel in shrouds, dimming the world until sea and sky blur into one grey veil. The men huddle where they sit, their faces ashen, their bodies trembling not from cold but from the weight of awe. They have endured storms, faced famine, fought raiders, but nothing has hollowed them as the gaze of the Kraken has. They speak little, their voices stripped away by revelation. The captain stands at the stern, his hands resting upon the tiller, though he knows it steers nothing now. His eyes are hollow, yet steady. He has accepted his place, not as master of this voyage, but as witness to something greater than kings, greater than gods spoken in temple halls. He feels both humbled and undone, like a man who has looked upon the face of the infinite and returned altered, never to walk as other men again. Old Tosti lies near the mast, his chest rising shallowly, his voice too frail for chanting. His lips form words without sound, fragments of prayer or memory, no longer distinct, yet there is peace in his expression, as though he has found what his long years had been leading toward. The boy watches him with sorrow, but also with recognition, for he knows the old man has glimpsed the same truth and is slipping into its embrace. The boy kneels at the prow, the rune pressed hard to his palm, blood seeping once more where the carving bites into flesh. He no longer resists the pain. It feels like part of him now, the mark that binds him to the deep. He gazes into the mist with eyes wide, waiting, certain that the Kraken is not finished. His chest trembles with both fear and readiness. He whispers, "I will carry it still," though he does not know if his voice reaches beyond his own breath. By midday the water begins to stir. It does not rage but swell, as though the sea itself is inhaling. Ripples spread outward, foaming in spirals, vast and deliberate. The men cry out softly, some covering their faces, others clutching charms. The captain closes his eyes, steadying himself. The boy grips the rune tighter, breath caught in his throat. Then the sea opens. Limbs rise, not scattered but in unison, breaching all around, swaying in slow rhythm. They gleam with water, suckers glowing faintly like lanterns in fog. The ship lies at their centre, dwarfed utterly, as though placed upon an altar. The water heaves, and the Kraken's head emerges once more, immense and barnacled, ridges carved by centuries. Rivers of foam crash down its sides. The great eye opens, pale and eternal, gazing upon them with calm that strips thought away. The hum returns, deeper and heavier than ever before. It shakes the hull, rattles bones, presses upon hearts until men groan aloud. Old Tosti gasps once, his lips forming the word circle, before falling still. His chest rises no more. His spirit yielded into the sea's embrace. The men bow their heads, some weeping silently, The captain places a hand upon his brow, whispering a farewell. The boy trembles, eyes wide, but he does not weep. He knows the old man has joined what he long served. The eye fixes upon the boy, and he feels its gaze pierce deeper than flesh, deeper than soul. Visions surge within him once more. Nets filled with fish, nets torn empty, storms devouring fleets, calm seas blessing harvest, children playing by tide pools, sailors swallowed whole by waves. He sees the circle complete, giving and taking, birth and death, terror and bounty. The Kraken is not hunger alone nor wrath, but the sea's memory, the sea's law, the sea's truth. Blood drips from his palm, mingling with spray. He whispers hoarsely, "I will carry it." His voice is weak, but it holds steady. The rune warms against his chest, glowing faintly in the mist. For a moment he feels the hum shift, not softer but resonant, as though acknowledgement has been granted. The limbs sway wider, the water rising until the ship is lifted high, perched upon the swell of immensity. The men cling to timbers, some praying, some silent, each caught in the enormity of the moment. The captain raises his head, whispering only, "So be it." His voice breaks, but his gaze remains firm. The Kraken lingers, its eye fixed, its hum pressing, as though sealing the bond it has forged. Then, slowly it begins to sink. Limbs fold inward, head lowering, the pale eye fading into shadow. Water crashes outward, drenching the ship, rocking it with violent force before stillness returns. Mist closes once more, swallowing horizon and sky. The men collapse in exhaustion, their spirits frayed. The captain bows his head, silent tears tracing his face. The boy remains upright, trembling, the rune against his chest, his breath shallow. He knows it is not yet finished. The Kraken has taken old Tosti, sealed its truth into his bones, and waits still for the circle to close. Night falls heavy, stars hidden, aurora faint. The ship drifts onward, silent save for the groan of wood and the sigh of waves. The boy whispers into the dark, "I will endure." And far below the Kraken stirs again, vast and patient, preparing its final revelation. The night passes in a hush, so deep it seems the sea itself holds its breath. Stars gleam faintly beyond the thinning mist, as if daring once more to witness what unfolds upon these waters. The ship drifts, its timbers groaning softly, its crew restless in dreams that weigh heavier than waking hours. All know the circle nears completion. They do not speak it aloud, yet it lives in their eyes, in the way they glance to the boy who kneels unmoving at the prow, rune pressed to his chest, gaze unbroken upon the horizon. The captain has grown gaunt, his face carved by sleepless nights and salt spray. Yet within his hollow gaze there is a clarity, as though he understands his role was never to command, but simply to endure, to bear witness until the sea no longer requires his strength. He stands steady, though his knees tremble, watching mist give way to pale dawn. He whispers words no louder than the creak of the mast. It is near. The men huddle together, some clutching talismans, others empty-handed, their faith dissolved into silence. They are shadows of the sailors who first braved the northern routes, yet their fear is not of death alone. It is of remembrance, of returning to land knowing they have looked upon a truth too vast to speak. They cling to one another, not for survival, but to anchor themselves in a world slipping away beneath their feet. Old Toasty lies still upon the deck, his body shrouded with canvas, his face uncovered that he might see the sky one last time. The boy glances back to him often, his chest aching with grief, though he knows the old man's spirit has already joined the deep. The sea took him not with cruelty but with claim, binding his breath to the circle eternal. The boy feels that same pull within his own bones, and though his youth aches for life yet unlived, he does not resist. By midday the sea begins to change. The swell is not violent but vast, a slow heaving as if the ocean itself rises to greet the sky. Mist coils upward in spirals, opening glimpses of horizon only to veil them again. The men stiffen, their knuckles white upon rope and rail. The captain closes his eyes, inhaling deeply as though he prepares his final breath. The boy clutches the rune tighter, blood seeping once more through his palm, staining the carving with fresh offering. He whispers into the wind, "I endure." Then the water splits. A column rises, taller than any mast, pouring downward in cascades. Limbs breach the surface all around, curling and swaying in rhythm, forming a circle so perfect it is as though drawn by divine hand. The ship lies at its center, a fragile heart cradled within colossal arms. The water surges beneath them, lifting them high, yet the vessel does not break. It is held as though spared with intention. The Kraken's head rises, immense and ridged, scarred by centuries of storms. Foam pours in rivers down its vast sides, and then the eye. Pale, unblinking, eternal, it gazes upon them all, yet upon none more deeply than the boy. The hum begins, low and thunderous, pressing into marrow, rattling the soul itself. Men collapse to their knees, some sobbing, some numb. The captain bows his head, tears streaking his salt-cracked face. The boy trembles violently, but he does not bow. He meets the gaze, heart racing, chest burning, the rune glowing against his flesh. Visions surge within him again, the first nets cast by ancient hands, storms swallowing whole fleets, offerings of gold and blood given to the sea, children born by its edge, sailors lost forever to its pull. The circle widens, spirals, binds. He sees not only what was, but what shall be. Future ships, future storms, men yet unborn who will call upon the sea's mercy, or curse its hunger. All is one, bound in unbroken law. The hum grows sharper, demanding. The boy gasps, his knees buckling, his bones quaking. His voice breaks as he cries out, "I will carry it." The words tear from him, frail yet resolute. Blood runs down his arm, staining deck and sea alike. The rune glows brighter, its lines burning with fire not of this world. For an instant he feels the eye soften, not with gentleness, but with recognition. The limbs tighten their circle, water rising higher, mist swirling into spirals that pierce the sky. The men wail, thinking the end has come. The captain lifts his face, whispering through tears, "So be it." He does not resist. The boy presses the rune harder, his body shaking with pain, with vision, with weight. He feels the hum within him now, not pressing from without, but echoing from his marrow, his blood, his breath. The Kraken lingers, vast and immovable, eye locked upon him. The hum deepens once more, sealing what has been spoken, what has been bound. Then slowly, with the solemnity of ritual, it begins to sink. Limbs withdraw, head lowering, the pale eye fading into shadow. Waves crash outward, rocking the ship with violent force before easing into silence. The circle breaks, and stillness returns. The crew collapse where they stand, too broken for words. The captain clings to the tiller, his body shuddering with silent sobs. The boy kneels alone at the prow, bloodied and trembling, the rune pressed against his chest. He knows the Kraken has not departed forever. It has sealed the bond, yet waits below for the final closing of the circle. Night falls once more, heavy with stars, the aurora flickering faint upon the horizon. The ship drifts onward, fragile and small, yet carrying within it something larger than worlds. The boy closes his eyes, whispering into the silence, "I endure." And deep beneath, the Kraken turns in the dark, vast and patient, waiting the moment when truth will surface one last time. The night deepens into a velvet quiet, stars sewn thickly across the dome of heaven. The aurora stretches faint ribbons of green and silver, as though the sky itself bears witness to the last turning of the circle. The ship drifts without sail or oar, borne gently by currents that seem guided by an unseen hand. The men lie scattered across the deck, not sleeping, not waking, their bodies spent, their hearts hollowed by wonder and grief. They breathe as survivors, yet they know they will never be as they were. The captain sits slumped at the stern, his eyes fixed on the sea, though they blur with tears. He does not cling to command now. He does not even cling to hope. Instead, he offers himself as one more witness, a mortal shard of memory to carry what has passed into the lineage of men. His lips move faintly, repeating the same words he has spoken since dawn. So be it. Not resignation, but reverence. The boy remains at the prow, his body weakened to trembling, his hand torn raw where the rune has carved its claim into him. Blood has dried across his wrist, yet the wound opens anew with each heartbeat, as though the mark no longer belongs to his flesh alone, but to the sea itself. The rune glows faintly in the starlight, pulsing with hidden fire. He gazes forward, eyes wide, waiting, knowing the final revelation lies near. His whisper is no louder than the waves. I endure. Then the ocean stirs once more, not with violence, but with the gravity of inevitability. The water darkens, the stars above seeming to dim as though drawn into its depth. Mist curls upward in spirals, veiling the horizon, drawing the world into a circle. The men groan too weak to rise, but they know this is the last rising, the final seal. The sea bulges, vast and slow, and then the Kraken emerges, not limb by limb, not fragment by fragment, but whole. Its enormity rises in full majesty, body ridged with barnacles, skin glistening with torrents of water, its limbs stretching in solemn arc. The ship is dwarfed beyond imagining, yet held steady as though placed upon the palm of a god. The great eye opens, pale and eternal, gazing not only upon the boy, but upon all captain crew, the dead, the living, the world itself. The hum begins, deeper than ever before, a vibration that swallows silence and fills marrow. It is not menace now, nor warning, but truth unveiled, the final chord in a song sung since the first wave struck the first shore. The men weep openly, their tears mingling with salt spray. The captain lifts his face, whispering, "We have seen." The boy's chest heaves as visions flood him one last time. He sees the sea's first breath upon the newborn earth, storms carving valleys, creatures rising and vanishing, men building boats and casting nets, women kneeling with offerings upon the shore, voices raised in fear and in praise. He sees futures yet to come, ships of wood replaced by ships of steel, sails by engines, yet all still at the mercy of tide and storm. He sees himself dissolve into the circle, not as boy, not as man, but as bearer of memory. Blood flows freely from his hand now, bright against the glowing rune. He presses it to his chest, whispering, "I will carry it." For as long as there is sea, his voice breaks, yet within it there is calm. The Kraken's eye narrows faintly, and for an instant the hum changes, resonant, answering, recognition, completion. The limbs sway wide, encircling ship and sky, as though closing the circle itself. The water rises high, but does not break. The men cling to one another, some praying, some silent, all knowing they have been caught in a moment no mortal tongue will ever rightly name. The captain places his hand upon the deck, murmuring through tears, "So be it." His voice trembles, yet it is firm. The Kraken lingers, its gaze steady, its presence unshaken. Then, with a slowness that feels like eternity, it begins to sink, not retreating, not vanishing, but returning to its place, as it has always done and always will. The eye fades into darkness, the limbs withdraw, the sea closes, the hum dissipates, leaving only the sigh of waves. Stillness returns. The ship drifts, broken but afloat, its crew alive yet changed forever. The boy collapses to his knees, breath ragged, bloodied hand pressed to the rune, which now glows faint but steady, a fire he knows will never leave him. He closes his eyes, whispering into the silence, I endure. Dawn comes pale and tender. The mist lifts, revealing a horizon clear and endless. The men stir slowly, blinking, as though waking from a dream that will never end. The captain stands once more at the stern, his body frail, his spirit steady. He looks to the boy, to the room glowing faintly in the morning light, and bows his head. The sea lies calm, waves lapping gentle, as though nothing had ever stirred its depths. Yet all aboard know the truth. The Kraken is not gone, nor will it ever be. It dwells below, vast and eternal, keeper of memory, terror and bounty alike. Its presence will haunt them, but it will also guide them, for they have seen the circle, and it has claimed them. The boy breathes deeply, the salt air filling him. He feels the room thrum in rhythm with his heart, with the waves, with the world itself. He understands now that endurance is not merely survival, but carrying truth onward, binding terror to reverence, fear to awe, death to life. He opens his eyes to the calm horizon, whispering, "The circle is whole." And so the ship sails on, fragile yet eternal, bearing men forever altered, carrying a boy who is no longer merely boy, but vessel of the sea's memory. Behind them, the waters close in silence. Beneath them the Kraken waits, patient as time, vast as eternity, the terror and the truth of the seas. The circle is complete, the tale is ended, the sea endures, and so shall the memory of the Kraken.